The darkest conspiracy theory iceberg explained. Now, if you are not familiar with a conspiracy theory iceberg, it's basically a way to rank theories by how mainstream they are. The top of the iceberg is stuff that most people have heard of, and as you go lower, the theories get more obscure, more extreme, and harder to verify, ending with the weirdest, most niche claims at the bottom. So without further ado, we have about 300 conspiracy theories to go over, so let's get into Tier 1. Big Pharma. Now, the Big Pharma theory claims that large drug companies secretly manipulate healthcare for profit. The idea is that they influence doctors and research to push expensive medications, to bury negative trial results, and to downplay side effects. Some versions even go deeper, saying that they suppress cheap cures or natural treatments because cures don't make as much money as long-term patients. Now, people point to lobbying, advertising, and revolving door jobs as evidence that the system is designed to maximize profits over public health. Creationism. Now, this one claims that the story of evolution is being pushed as official science, while evidence for divine creation is ignored or censored. Believers argue that schools and universities and even the media promote evolution for ideological reasons, basically just to remove religion from society rather than just having, pure evidence. Now, some versions say that scientists and institutions protect careers and funding by shutting down dissent, by mocking alternatives, or labeling creationist ideas as unscientific no matter what. Basically, the core claim of this theory is that creation is true and powerful institutions work to keep it out of mainstream education and culture. Chemtrails. Now, the chemtrails theory says that the white trails behind airplanes aren't just normal condensation. They're actually chemicals being sprayed for, unknown reasons or for hidden purposes. Now, depending on, which version of chemtrails you look at, it's basically just claimed that governments or elites use planes to control weather, to affect health, to track populations, or to even influence people's behavior. People who believe this theory point to lingering trails, grid-like patterns in the sky, or unusual haze as proof of chemtrails. But of course, scientists just say that these are contrails, which are ice crystals that were formed when hot exhaust hits cold, humid air. And how long these contrails last kind of just depends on atmospheric conditions. But the theory basically just doesn't buy that at all. 23 Enigma. The 23 Enigma is the belief that the number 23 shows up way too often to be random, and it hints at a hidden pattern behind reality. Now, people connect major events, dates, tragedies, celebrity deaths, and even personal signs back to 23, kind of like it's some sort of code or something like that. Astral projection. Now, astral projection is the idea that your consciousness or your soul can leave your body and travel outside of it. People claim that they float above themselves, they visit distant places, or they enter other realms while their body stays asleep. It sometimes connects to secret government programs or psychic spying, like using out-of-body experiences to gather information on someone. The Denver Airport. Now, the Denver International Airport is a conspiracy magnet because people think it's hiding something huge under it. The theory says that the airport was built with secret tunnels and bunkers for elites, the government, or a new world order takeover. People point to strange murals, to Freemason references, to odd plaques, to even, the weird layout and also the blue Mustang statue. And people are just saying those are the clues of whatever is going on there, which I live in Colorado and I've been to the Denver airport, 20 plus times, I think, in my life. And I've never felt weird there or ever felt like there was something crazy going on. But hey, that's just a theory. Some people also claim that it's a doomsday shelter or even a secret military base. But again, who knows? Pizzagate. Now, Pizzagate was a claim that a child trafficking ring was being run by powerful political figures, supposedly operating out of a Washington, D.C. pizza place called Comet Ping Pong. Now, people said that coded language and leaked emails proved that this was going on and that the basement of this pizza place hid all of the evidence. The multiverse. Now, the multiverse theory says that our universe isn't the only one and that there could be countless other universes existing alongside it. Now, in some versions, each universe has different laws of physics. In others, every time a choice is made, reality splits, creating, alternate timelines where different outcomes happen. Some people even say that certain elites, governments, or secret programs can access, observe, or even travel between these universes to gain knowledge, power, or control events in our world. Nibiru. Now, the Nibiru theory claims that there's a hidden planet on a long extreme orbit that periodically enters the inner solar system. People also sometimes call this Planet X. Now, the story says that the planet's approach could trigger massive disasters on Earth, like earthquakes, tsunamis, pole shifts, or even an apocalypse. Some people also claim that governments and space agencies know that it's real, but they cover it up to avoid any panic, and that ancient civilizations, especially like the Sumerians, knew about Nibiru and recorded it in myths and star charts. The flat Earth. Now, the flat Earth theory claims that Earth isn't a spinning globe, but a flat plane, often described as kind of like a disc. Now, in many versions, the North Pole is at the center, Antarctica is an ice wall around the edge, and space travel is completely faked. The theory says that governments, scientists, and space agencies are part of a massive cover-up to hide Earth's true shape, either for control, for money, or to conceal deeper truths about reality. Some people even say that there are domes over the sky, there are hidden lands beyond the ice wall, and a sun and moon that move above the plane. Literally like a Minecraft world, basically. NPCs. Now, the NPC theory says that a lot of people aren't fully conscious individuals, but kind of more like background characters running on autopilot. Basically human, non-player characters, if that makes sense. The idea is that only some people have real self-awareness, inner dialogue, or souls, while others just repeat mainstream opinions, they follow routines, and they react predictably. People also frame this kind of as like a simulation, like reality is a game-like system and NPCs are filler, programs to make the world feel populated. Other versions treat it spiritually, like only certain people are truly awake. Now, the Rothschilds conspiracy theory claims that the Rothschild banking family secretly controls global finance, and by extension, they also control politics and wars and even major world events. Now, the story says that they built their power through international banking, from loans to governments, and influence over central banks. And then they used that wealth to shape nations behind the scenes. Many versions claim that they fund or steer both sides of conflicts, they control major corporations and media, and they operate through hidden networks of elites to push a long-term agenda for global control. Quantum immortality. Quantum immortality is the idea that you never experience your own death. It kind of ties into the many worlds version of quantum mechanics, which is just basically whenever a life or death moment happens, reality splits. In one branch you die, but in another you survive. The theory claims that your consciousness only continues in the timeline where you live. So from your perspective, you keep, making it no matter what happens. Some versions say that this explains near-death escapes, unlikely survivals, or the eerie feeling that you should have died, but you didn't. Sacred geometry. Now, sacred geometry is the belief that certain shapes and math patterns, like the flower of life and the golden ratio, are the hidden blueprint of reality. The theory says that these forms show up everywhere, like in nature, in human bodies, in architecture, and even the structure of the universe. Some people claim that ancient civilizations understood this and encoded it into temples, into pyramids, and even religious art to tap into higher consciousness, energy, or spiritual power. Some versions say that mastering these patterns unlocks universal laws and can influence reality itself. Skinwalkers. Now, skinwalkers come from Navajo legend and are usually described as witches who can shapeshift into animals or mimic human voices. But the modern conspiracy version says that skinwalkers are real and they are active in remote areas and they are connected to disappearances and strange animal mutations and these not deer sightings Basically creatures that look almost like animals but move or act completely wrong. People say that those are skinwalkers. People claim that they can lure you by calling your name, they can copy a loved one's voice, or they appear as a tall figure with glowing eyes. Some people even tie them to secret government research, especially around Skinwalker Ranch. The Smoky God. Now, the Smoky God is a Hollow Earth style theory based on a 1908 story claiming that a sailor named Olaf Jansen traveled through an opening at the North Pole into the inside of the Earth. The theory says that the planet is hollow, lit by an inner smoky sun, and inhabited by a tall, advanced civilization living in a warm interior world. Some versions add that polar expeditions, governments, or militaries found entrances and then covered it up to hide inner Earth resources, secret species, or an entire hidden realm, like literally right beneath our feet. Smiley Face Killer. Now, the smiley face killer theory claims that there's a hidden network of killers targeting young men, often around college aged, who disappear after nights out and are later found dead in rivers or bodies of water. Now, the evidence, according to believers of this theory, is a repeating pattern, which is missing person cases near bars, bodies recovered in similar circumstances, and smiley face graffiti found near some of the recovery sites. Now, some versions say that it's an organized group doing coordinated abductions. Others claim that it's a cult-like network operating across, multiple states, with law enforcement either missing the pattern or just covering it up for some unknown reason. Toxoplasmosis. Now, the toxoplasmosis theory says that a real parasite called Toxoplasma gondii does more than infect animals and humans. It may subtly influence behavior. Now, the claim is that the parasite can alter risk-taking, fear responses, mood, and decision-making, potentially shaping personalities or even social trends on a large scale. Now, a common version focuses on cats, since the parasite reproduces in cats and can spread through cat feces, undercooked meat, or contaminated soil and water. Now, some people even suggest that institutions downplay its mental and behavioral effects because the implications are just way too unsettling. All right, now let's get into Tier 2, the Philadelphia experiment. Now, the Philadelphia experiment claims that the US Navy ran a secret World War II experiment, usually tied to the destroyer escort USS Eldridge, and they basically just tried to make the ship invisible using powerful electromagnetic fields. Now, the story says that the ship not only disappeared from sight, but it actually teleported to another location and then reappeared. Now, the darker versions add that crew members were harmed, like they were disoriented, they were driven insane, or they were even fused into the ship's metal. Some versions even connect it to Einstein's theories, to unified field research, to time travel, or to even later projects like MK Ultra and Montauk. The Fresno Nightcrawlers. Now, the Fresno Nightcrawlers are a cryptid said to roam California, named after a grainy night vision footage filmed near Fresno. The theory describes them as pale, stick-like beings that look like walking legs. It's almost like they have, no torso, and they just have like these long limbs, and they just glide in a super unnatural way. Now, some claim that they're a rare species. Others say that they're spirits tied to native folklore, and some connect them to aliens or interdimensional creatures. Sightings usually involve late-night security videos, rural roads, and people reporting silent humanoid figures moving oddly through fields or neighborhoods. Atlantean tunnels. The Atlantean tunnels theory claims that the lost civilization of Atlantis didn't just vanish, but it actually left behind a massive underground tunnel system spanning, continents. These tunnels are said to connect ancient sites like Egypt, the Americas, and even Europe, kind of acting like a hidden highway for travel, for trade, or even for escape. Some versions say that the tunnels were carved with advanced technology, they contain Atlantean artifacts, crystal power sources, or records of lost knowledge, and they are guarded or sealed off by governments. Other versions tie it to Hollow Earth ideas, suggesting that the tunnels lead to vast underground cities that are still inhabited today. HAARP. Now, the HAARP theory claims that the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program is more than just a research project. It's a secret weapon. Now, the idea is that HAARP can manipulate the ionosphere to control weather, to trigger earthquakes, to disrupt communications, or even affect human thoughts and emotions. Some versions say that it's used for geoengineering, for military dominance, or creating storms and droughts to destabilize countries. Now, believers often link HAARP to unusual sky phenomena, to sudden extreme weather, or even global disasters, arguing that it's proof of a hidden technology being tested or developed behind the scenes. Polybius. Now, Polybius is an urban legend conspiracy about a mysterious arcade game that supposedly appeared in the early 1980s. Now, the story says that the game was insanely addictive and caused like weird side effects, things like nightmares and memory loss and seizures and mood changes, and some even say mind control. Now, according to the theory that men in black would regularly visit arcades to collect data from the machines, suggesting that it was a secret government experiment in psychological manipulation. Some versions claim that it used subliminal messages, flashing patterns, or hidden audio to influence players and test how easily people could be controlled through entertainment. JFK was killed by the CIA. This theory just claims that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated as part of an intelligence agency plot. Now, in this story, JFK had become a threat because of conflicts over Cuba, the Bay of Pigs fallout, Vietnam policy, or plans to limit CIA power. Now, the theory often frames Lee Harvey Oswald as a patsy and says that the real operation involved a wider network, things like handlers or multiple shooters, and just a, coordinated cover-up using classified files, controlled investigations, and media influence to steer the official narrative. Elisa Lam. The Elisa Lam conspiracy theory centers on the 2013 death of Elisa Lam at the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. Now, it focuses on the eerie elevator video showing her acting strangely, then the later discovery of her body in a rooftop water tank. The theory claims that the official story is incomplete and that she was murdered or targeted, possibly involving hotel staff, a cover-up, or someone who had access to restricted areas. Other versions connect it to occult activity, paranormal forces, or a broader pattern of suspicious deaths tied to the hotel's history. Clinton body doubles. Now, the Clinton body doubles theory claims that Hillary Clinton and even sometimes Bill Clinton has used lookalikes to appear in public when they are sick, when they are exhausted, when they are hiding injuries, or when they are avoiding threats. Now, the idea is that certain photos or videos show different facial features, different heights, different voices, different postures, and even different mannerisms, and that these are, proof that a, stand-in was used for events, for travel, or even staged appearances. Some versions say that it's part of a wider political cover-up to maintain a public image, to dodge scrutiny, or to create alibis during, major news moments. Like, Hillary, where were you when Jeffrey Epstein died? And she'd be like, oh, I was at this thing, and there'd be a picture of her at this thing, but was she really there? Accelerationism. Now, accelerationism is the idea that society should be pushed to collapse faster so that a new system can rise from the wreckage. It claims that certain political groups, extremists, or even elites intentionally fuel chaos, things like riots and economic crashes and culture wars and terrorism, or even just social, division, to accelerate the breakdown of governments and norms. The theory says that this is an accidental dysfunction, that it's a strategy. Once things hit a tipping point, the people behind it either seize power during the collapse or reshape society afterward through authoritarian control, revolution, or a totally new world order. Expanding Earth. The expanding Earth theory claims that Earth used to be much smaller and has been gradually growing in size. In this idea, the continents once fit together like a tight shell on a smaller planet, but then they spread apart as Earth expanded, which would explain continental drift without traditional plate tectonics. Now, some versions say that new matter is being created inside of Earth, or that the planet is swelling from internal forces. Some people even say that mainstream geology hides this because it would rewrite physics, it would expose flaws in accepted science, or it would reveal secret knowledge about Earth's true structure and its history. Read chips. Now, this theory claims that powerful groups want to implant tiny tracking microchips, often described as RFID chips, into people. The idea is that the chip would store your identity, your medical info, your money access, and even location data, letting governments or corporations monitor you in real time. Some versions say that it happens through vaccines, through medical procedures, or even digital ID programs. And eventually it will replace cash and passports and even like the keys to your car or the keys to your home. The end game, according to the theory, is a fully trackable, controllable population where access to jobs, travel, and services can be switched on and off. Kind of like, you know, a social credit score, sort of, but it's implanted in your brain. You have a social credit score, but it's implanted in your brain. That's what this theory is saying. Neo-dinosaurs. Neo-dinosaurs is the idea that dinosaurs never fully went extinct, or that dinosaur-like creatures still exist today and they are just hidden in remote regions. The theory says that these animals survive in deep jungles, in swamps, in caves, or even isolated ecosystems, and sightings are covered up to avoid panic or to protect secret research. Other versions claim that governments or private groups have proof, things like bones and photos and even eggs, but they keep it classified to, just control the narrative. Lost cosmonauts. The lost cosmonauts theory claims that the Soviet Union secretly sent astronauts into space before Yuri Gagarin or during the early space race, and that those missions ended in complete disaster. The idea is that some cosmonauts died in failed launches, they got stranded in orbit, or they burned up during re-entry, and that the USSR covered it all up to protect its image. Now, a major part of this story involves alleged intercepted radio transmissions, things like distress calls, fading heartbeats, or like final messages, suggesting that people were up there and never made it back. Fermi paradox. Now, the Fermi paradox literally just asks a simple question. If the universe is massive and full of billions of galaxies, then intelligent alien life should be common. So where the hell is everyone? The theory suggests that something is stopping civilizations from making contact or being visible. Some versions say that advanced species hide themselves, they monitor us quietly, or they follow a non-interference rule. Others claim that civilizations tend to destroy themselves before spreading, or that humanity is early to the cosmic stage and is just alone for the moment. But some people, often frame it as proof that, aliens are real, but they are intentionally concealed. Crystal skull in the Memphis Pyramid. This theory claims that a powerful crystal skull is hidden inside the Memphis Pyramid in Tennessee. The idea is that the skull isn't just an artifact, but it's a tool with ancient or extraterrestrial origins. It's capable of storing knowledge, of amplifying consciousness, or even manipulating energy. Some versions say that the pyramid was secretly designed or repurposed to house it because of its shape and its alignment. The theory often ties the skull to lost civilizations, to Atlantean knowledge, or even alien technology, and claims that its true purpose is being concealed from the public. Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Grove theory claims that a private retreat in Northern California is where powerful men, like politicians, billionaires, military leaders, and even CEOs, it's basically just a place where they all meet in secret. According to the theory, these gatherings involve hidden rituals, elite networking, and decisions that shape global events behind closed doors. A major focus is the cremation of care ceremony, often described as symbolic or occult. Some versions say that real political deals, war planning, and long-term agendas are discussed there, completely outside public oversight, making the Grove kind of like a shadow power center for global elites. Dolphin intelligence. The dolphin intelligence theory claims that dolphins are far more intelligent than humans, are told, possibly even equal or superior in some ways. The idea is that dolphins have complex languages, they have advanced self-awareness, and even deep emotional intelligence, and may even communicate ideas that humans can't decode. Some versions say that dolphins once had a more advanced role on Earth or evolved alongside humans as a parallel intelligent species. Some people even take this further and claim that governments or militaries studied dolphins for communication, for psychic abilities, or even underwater surveillance, and then they buried what they discovered to avoid rewriting what we know about non-human intelligence. All right, well, now let's move on to tier 3. So we're getting a little deeper and a little darker. That's what she said. Douglas Home. The Douglas Home theory centers on Daniel Douglas Home, who was a famous 19th century spiritualist medium. Now, the claim is that Home had genuine supernatural abilities, including levitation, communicating with spirits, moving objects without touching them, and surviving extreme conditions completely unharmed. According to the theory, he performed these feats in front of royalty, in front of scientists, and even in front of large crowds without ever being caught for faking them. Some versions say that his abilities were real but threatening to scientific and religious institutions, so his powers were dismissed, they were downplayed, or they were just quietly erased from like serious historical discussion. Voodoo economy. The voodoo economy theory claims that modern economies are held together by illusion rather than real value. The idea is that money, markets, and even growth are propped up by debt, speculation, and psychological belief instead of like actual production. According to the theory, governments and financial elites manipulate numbers, they inflate assets, and they print money to keep the system alive, even though it's fundamentally pretty broken. The theory suggests that the economy works more like magic or like a ritual. You know, it's confidence and narratives and trust, where once belief collapses, the whole system can, unravel almost instantly. New Delhi Monkey Man. The New Delhi Monkey Man theory comes from reports in early 2000s India of a strange creature attacking people at night. Now, witnesses described a monkey-like figure with glowing red eyes, with metal claws, and the ability to leap between rooftops. The attacks caused panic and injuries and mass hysteria across neighborhoods. Some versions claim that it was a mutated animal, a masked vigilante, a secret experiment, or something that was supernatural. Others suggest that it wasn't a single creature at all, but it was a mysterious presence feeding on fear and spreading chaos through the city. Bill Gates bought the Vatican. This theory just says that Bill Gates secretly bought or gained control over the Vatican. The story says that the purchase wasn't public because it happened through shell companies, through donations, or even financial leverage rather than just like a normal sale. Some versions claim that it was about influence over global religion, over population policy, vaccines, or even world politics, while others say that it ties into a broader elite takeover of, historic institutions. The theory frames the Vatican as financially vulnerable and quietly absorbed into a larger global power structure, with the true ownership, Bill Gates, hidden from the public. Soviet time travel. The Soviet time travel theory claims that the USSR secretly developed time travel technology during the Cold War. Now, according to the theory, Soviet scientists ran classified experiments to send people or even information into the past or into the future to gain military and political advantages. Some versions say that test subjects vanished, they returned aged, or they came back with knowledge of future events. Others claim that time travel was used to alter timelines, to sabotage enemies, or to observe key historical moments, with all of the evidence just buried after the fall of the Soviet Union. Archons. The Archons theory comes from ancient Gnostic beliefs and claims that reality is secretly controlled by non-human entities called Archons. Now, these beings are said to exist in higher or hidden dimensions, and they feed on human fear, suffering, and negative emotion. It's said that Archons manipulate governments, religion, media, and even belief systems to keep humanity distracted, divided, and unaware of its true spiritual potential. Some versions say that they pose as gods, as aliens, or elites, while others claim they influence thoughts directly, trapping humans in a false reality or a prison planet designed to harvest energy. Mars was the Garden of Eden. This theory claims that the biblical Garden of Eden wasn't on Earth, but it was actually on Mars. The idea is that Mars was once a lush, life-supporting world and the original home of humanity, or an advanced civilization that humans descended from. According to the theory, a planetary disaster or war destroyed Mars's atmosphere, forcing survivors to escape to Earth. Religious texts, ancient myths, and similarities between early human knowledge and lost technology are said to be distorted memories of this migration, with Eden representing Mars before its collapse. 7 nations the US won't attack. This theory claims that there are exactly 7 countries that the United States will never invade or directly attack, no matter what the circumstances are. Now, the reasons vary by kind of who you ask. Some say that these nations are protected by hidden treaties, by, advanced weapons, or even alien alliances, or just, financial leverage over the US government. Other versions argue that these countries hold damaging information, they control key global resources, or they are strategically untouchable due to geography or alliances. This theory is basically just framing US foreign policy as sort of selective, with certain nations quietly placed off limits and we just don't know about it. But I think we can kind of guess which nations would be under this protection, if you will. I'll leave that open-ended so you guys can fight in the comments about what countries you guys think it is. Axiom 23. Axiom 23 is a meta conspiracy idea that claims that once you're aware of conspiracies, you'll always be able to connect any event back to one. The theory says that every major event, every political event, every cultural or even personal event can be explained through hidden forces, through secret coordination, or unseen agendas. In other words, nothing anymore is random. The deeper you go, the more patterns you see, until conspiracy becomes the, default explanation for, even reality itself. It frames awareness as a one-way door, and once you, see it, you can't stop seeing connections everywhere, whether they're real or they're constructed. Again, like today, there's one certain thing which I'm pretty sure a lot of you probably know what I'm talking about, but it shows up in everything. And it could just be people that just want it to show up in everything, so they're making little tiny details oh, it's this, But I think you guys know what I'm talking about. Am I saying that it's true? No, none of this stuff is true. Not saying any of that. Just saying. Göbekli Tepe. Now, the Göbekli Tepe theory claims that this ancient site in modern-day Turkey rewrites human history. The massive stone pillars are dated to around 9600 BCE, thousands of years earlier than agriculture or known civilization. The theory says that an advanced, organized society existed far earlier than mainstream history admits, and may have possessed lost knowledge about astronomy or ritual or even sacred geometry. Some versions suggest that the Göbekli Tepe was a global hub, it was a temple complex built by a forgotten civilization, or even survivors of a previous advanced culture whose existence was later erased or buried. Literally buried or erased, yeah. US funds ISIS. This theory is just claiming that the United States indirectly or secretly supported Islamic State. The idea is that money, weapons, or training meant for allies, rebels, or proxy forces in the Middle East ended up in ISIS hands, either intentionally, like I said, or as a part of a larger strategy. Some versions say that this was done to destabilize regions, to justify military presence, or to reshape borders, while others claim that ISIS was allowed to grow as a tool against rival companies. The theory frames ISIS not as an independent force, but as a byproduct of hidden geopolitical maneuvering. North Korean ghost boats. This theory focuses on abandoned or deceased-filled fishing boats that mysteriously wash up on Japanese shores. The theory claims that these boats aren't just accidents, but they are signs of darker problems, things like secret military operations, forced labor fishing programs, starvation, or even covert missions gone wrong. Some versions say that fishermen are sent far out to sea under impossible conditions and never return, while others suggest that defectors, spies, or classified naval activity. The boats are called ghost boats because they arrive, empty or carrying bodies with no clear explanation of what happened at sea. Yantic River Dwarves. The Yantic River Dwarves theory comes from Connecticut folklore and claims that a hidden race of small humanoid beings live near the Yantic River. Now, according to the story, these dwarves lived underground or in forested areas and were hostile to outsiders. Local legends say that they attacked early settlers, they sabotaged camps, and even killed intruders who got too close. Some versions describe them as an ancient non-human species, while others link them to native legends, subterranean civilizations, or a lost race that retreated into hiding as humans expanded into their territory. Blackbird at Chernobyl. The Blackbird at Chernobyl theory claims that a strange, dark, winged entity appeared around the time of the 1986 Chernobyl nuclear disaster. Witnesses reported seeing a massive black bird or shadowy humanoid creature with wings and glowing red eyes and just like this overwhelming sense of dread. According to the theory, people who saw it experienced nightmares, strange phone calls, and feelings of impending doom before the reactor explosion. Some versions say that the creature was a supernatural omen, a harbinger of catastrophe, or an interdimensional being drawn to nuclear energy and large-scale human suffering. Operation Bluebeam. Now, Operation Bluebeam is a conspiracy theory claiming a global fake alien invasion or religious event will be staged to establish a new world government. The idea says that advanced technology like holograms, satellites, and psychological warfare will be used to project images of gods, UFOs, or supernatural beings into the sky. These events would simulate miracles, alien attacks, or apocalyptic signs to frighten humanity into accepting a single global authority. Some versions say that it's literally the final step in creating a one-world government, replacing existing religions and nations with a unified system of control. ElsaGate. Now, ElsaGate is a conspiracy theory centered on disturbing children's videos that appeared on platforms like YouTube. The theory claims that their videos, often using popular characters like Elsa, Spider-Man, or even cartoon mascots, were intentionally designed to slip past moderation while exposing kids to strange, violent, sexual, or even unsettling scenarios. According to the theory, this wasn't, random content farming, but it was a coordinated effort by hidden networks exploiting algorithms to target children. Some versions suggest that automated systems, foreign studios, or even organized groups were deliberately manipulating kids' content ecosystems for profit, for data harvesting, or even just for these darker psychological purposes. Bin Laden died early 2000s. Now, this theory claims that Osama bin Laden actually died years before his official reported death in 2011. According to the theory, bin Laden passed away in the early 2000s due to an illness, an injury, or even a covert operation, and that his continued existence was used as a symbolic enemy. Some versions say that recorded messages were old, were staged, or even faked, and that keeping him alive helped justify his wars, surveillance, and military actions. The theory frames his later death announcement as a political closure to a story that had already ended behind the scenes. R245. R245 is a conspiracy-linked term from Scientology lore that refers to an extreme method of handling enemies. According to the theory, R245 is a coded directive meaning physical elimination, specifically a gunshot, used to permanently remove a person seen as a threat. The term is cited as proof that hidden organizations use euphemisms and internal codes to basically mask violent actions, which implies, secret justice systems operating outside the law under spiritual or ideological justifications. McMartin tunnels. This theory comes from allegations tied to the McMartin preschool in the 1980s. Now, the theory claims that a network of hidden underground tunnels existed beneath the school and was used for secret rituals, for abuse, and even for trafficking. Now, according to the story, these tunnels connected to other buildings and were later sealed or destroyed to erase the evidence. Some versions say that authorities knew about the tunnels and helped cover them up. while others claim that the case exposed a much larger, hidden system operating beneath, everyday institutions. Phantasma, Colorado. This theory describes a mysterious red-haired humanoid creature reported in parts of the American Southwest and northern Mexico. Witnesses say that it resembles a Bigfoot-like being with a reddish or copper-colored coat, glowing eyes, and an aggressive presence. The name literally translates to red ghost, referring both to its color and its habit of appearing briefly before vanishing. Some versions claim that it stalks rural areas, ranches, and highways, while others say that it's a supernatural entity tied to desert folklore, borderland legends, or an ancient species that avoids human contact, but will occasionally reveal itself. Cattle mutilations. Cattle mutilations refer to reports of livestock found dead with precise surgical cuts, missing organs, and just no signs of struggle or predators. The theory claims that these animals are deliberately targeted and they are often drained of blood, with tongues, eyes, or reproductive organs removed really cleanly. Some versions say that the mutilations are done by extraterrestrials collecting biological samples, while others blame secret government or military experiments involving radiation, disease monitoring, or genetic research. Now, the lack of tracks, witnesses, or conventional explanation fuels the idea that something highly advanced and hidden is responsible for these repeated global incidents. 1999 apartment bombings. The 1999 apartment bombings theory claims that a series of deadly explosions in Russian apartment buildings were not carried out by terrorists, but were instead a false flag operation. According to the theory, the attacks were orchestrated by elements within the FSB to create fear, to justify a new war, and to consolidate political power. Now, the bombings killed hundreds and led to increased security measures and military action in Chechnya. Some versions say that suspicious drills, conflicting official stories, and blocked investigations point to an external operation rather than an external enemy. DUMBs. Now, DUMBs stands for Deep Underground Military Bases. The theory claims that governments have built massive secret facilities far beneath the Earth's surface, connected by underground tunnels and high-speed transport systems. These bases are said to house advanced technology, weapons, experimental aircraft, genetic research, or even non-human entities. Some versions claim that they're used as doomsday shelters for elites, while others say that they're sites for black budget projects beyond public oversight. The theory sometimes connects DUMBs to earthquakes, to unexplained drilling, to hollow earth ideas, and whistleblowers who claim entire underground cities exist beneath major countries. Crypto's Code. The Crypto's Code refers to a mysterious encrypted message embedded in a sculpture called Cryptos at CIA headquarters. The sculpture contains 4 coded sections. Most have been partially deciphered, but one final section remains unsolved. The theory says that the hidden message contains classified information, a historical secret, or a warning meant only for those who can crack it. Some versions claim that it points to buried data, to secret locations, or deeper intelligence operations, turning Cryptos into a real-world puzzle deliberately designed to test code breakers and conceal something important literally in plain sight. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting even deeper. Let's move on to Tier 4, Weather Wars. Now, weather wars is the theory that nations secretly use technology to control or to weaponize the weather. The idea is that governments can trigger storms, droughts, floods, heat waves, or even cold snaps to damage enemy economies, agriculture, or morale without having to fire a single bullet. Now, some versions say that hurricanes can be steered, rain can be turned on and off, and earthquakes can be induced using energy-based weapons. Now, according to the theory, weather manipulation is the ultimate silent weapon. It's deniable, it's devastating, and it's capable of reshaping geopolitics while all, looking just like a natural disaster. Odessa Catacombs. The Odessa Catacombs theory claims that the vast underground tunnel system beneath Odessa Catacombs hides far more than just abandoned mines. The tunnels stretch for thousands of miles and are said to contain secret bases, hidden communities, lost treasure, wartime bunkers, and even sealed off zones that no one is allowed to enter. Some versions claim that criminals, military units, or unknown groups operate underground, while others say that people have vanished inside, encountering strange creatures or hidden societies. The scale and the complexity of the catacombs fuel the idea that large sections remain unexplored, and they are intentionally concealed. Eazy-E was murdered. This theory claims that Eazy-E didn't die naturally from AIDS, but was deliberately killed. The idea is that he was poisoned or infected after becoming a threat, either financially, legally, or within the music industry. Some versions say that rivals, executives, or even people close to him wanted him silenced over contracts, money, or control of NWA's legacy. The theory often points to this sudden timing of his illness, his rapid decline, and the unresolved tensions around his business dealings as signs that something darker happened behind the scenes. Israeli animal spying. The Israeli animal spying theory claims that Israel has used animals like birds and sharks and dolphins and even insects as covert surveillance tools. Now, according to this theory, these animals are implanted with tracking devices, cameras, or sensors, and they are released into sensitive areas to gather intelligence without drawing any suspicion. Stories often involve animals found with tags, electronics, or unusual behavior near military zones or borders. Some versions say that this method allows spying where drones or agents would be too obvious, and it kind of just turns wildlife into living Renaissance tools operating quietly in plain sight, like literally. Like my dog who is on my shirt, dude, she could have been a plant by the CIA, and the CIA is listening to me to make sure I don't dig too deep, you know what I'm saying? Sheep-goat effect. The sheep-goat effect is the idea that belief itself affects psychic or paranormal abilities. Now, sheep are people who believe psychic phenomena are real, while goats are the skeptics. According to the theory, sheep consistently perform better in experiments involving telepathy, ESP, or psychokinesis, while goats perform worse or even produce opposite results. The effect suggests that human belief can influence reality, perception, or experimental outcomes. Some versions claim that skeptics unconsciously block or negate psychic effects, while believers amplify them, implying that consciousness plays an active role in shaping what is possible. Hyperreality. Hyperreality is the idea that modern society can no longer tell the difference between what's real and what's simulated. According to the theory, media, advertising, social platforms, and digital images don't just represent reality, they replace it. People interact more with symbols, narratives, and curated versions of life rather than the real thing. Over time, the copy becomes more influential than reality itself. In this state, public opinion, identity, politics, and even memory are shaped by simulations, creating a world where perception matters more than truth and reality becomes whatever is most convincing. Crypto-terrestrials. The crypto-terrestrials theory suggests that non-human intelligent beings live on Earth and not in space. Instead of aliens from another planet, these entities are said to exist underground, underwater, in remote regions, or in hidden dimensions alongside humanity. Some versions claim that they are ancient civilizations that predate humans, while others say that they evolved separately and learned to stay concealed. The theory often links crypto-terrestrials to UFOs, to folklore creatures, to underground bases, and even unexplained sightings, arguing that these beings have been always right here, but they've just been out of our sight. MK Ultra. We all should know MK Ultra, but it was a secret program said to involve the US government experimenting with mind control. Now, the theory claims that intelligence agencies tested drugs like LSD, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, psychological torture, and even behavioral conditioning to control thoughts and actions. Now, subjects were often unaware that they were a part of the experiments, and some versions even say that MK Ultra research went far beyond, what was admitted. They could have done things like create programmed assassins or sleeper agents, or even make these broken personalities. The theory also claims that the program never truly ended, but it evolved into something more advanced, or that hidden forms of psychological manipulation were used in media or warfare or just social control. Moon built by aliens. This theory claims that the moon isn't a natural object, but it's an artificial structure created by extraterrestrials. The idea is that the moon was placed in Earth's orbit intentionally to stabilize the planet, to monitor humanity, or to serve as a massive space station. People point to the moon's size, its precise distance, its unusual orbit, even hollow Earth claims, and just strange seismic behavior as signs of alien construction on the moon. Some versions say that the moon houses alien technology or bases inside of it, while others claim that it was brought here long ago to seed or to control life on Earth. Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a conspiracy theory claiming a United Nations sustainability plan is actually a hidden blueprint for global control. The theory says that environmental policies, smart cities, zoning laws, and land use regulations are designed to push people off of rural land and into tightly controlled urban areas. According to the idea, private property would be phased out, personal freedom would then be reduced, and then daily life would be monitored under the banner of climate protection and sustainable development. Some versions frame it as a slow legal takeover implemented through local governments without the public realizing that it's a part of a global agenda. Frankenstein barrier. The Frankenstein barrier theory says that humanity is approaching a point where artificial intelligence and advanced technology become uncontrollable. The idea is that once machines reach true self-improvement, they will evolve faster than humans can understand or to stop them. According to the theory, crossing the barrier creates a runaway intelligence explosion where AI surpasses human control and they rewrite their own limits and they reshape society, economics, and power structures. Some versions frame it as a hidden threshold that elites and governments are racing toward, believing that they can control it, while others warn that it becomes a new dominant force that replaces human authority, literally entirely. Alex Jones is Bill Hicks. This theory claims that Alex Jones is actually comedian Bill Hicks living under a completely new identity. The theory says that Hicks faked his death in the 1990s and re-emerged as Alex Jones to continue his message in a different form. Supporters point to similarities in voice, and facial features, and humor, and anti-establishment themes, and even their on-air rants. Some versions suggest that the transformation was intentional, using shock media and conspiracy culture as a new stage to basically wake people up politically and socially while avoiding the limits of just being a comedian or of just comedy in general. Deep ecology fascism. Now, deep ecology fascism is a theory that claims extreme environmentalism can turn authoritarian. The idea is that protecting nature becomes more important than human freedom, leading to strict population control, forced relocation, bans on development, and harsh limits on individual rights. According to the theory, elites or governments could use environmental crises as justification to impose rigid social control, deciding who gets resources, where people can live, and how many humans the planet should support. It frames environmentalism not as protection, but as a tool for centralized power and eco-based authoritarian rule. Hair-cutting fairy panic. This basically just refers to waves of mass hysteria where people claim a mysterious entity sneaks into their homes at night and cuts their hair while they sleep. Reports often involve cleanly cut hair, no sign of forced entry, and victims waking up confused or terrified. The fairy is usually described as invisible or supernatural, sometimes blamed on spirits, witches, or unknown beings. These panics tend to spread quickly through rumors and media, creating clusters of similar incidents in specific regions, where fear itself seems to fuel more reports and sightings. Social Credit System 2020. The Social Credit System 2020 theory claims that governments are building a system that scores citizens based on behavior, beliefs, and compliance. According to the idea, actions like spending habits, online speech, social connections, and rule following are tracked and turned into a personal score. A high score grants privileges like travel and jobs or loans, while a low score restricts access to services or opportunities. The theory often points to systems associated with China as a prototype, suggesting similar models were planned globally using apps, digital IDs, and surveillance technology to manage and to control populations. JFK killed an ultra-right coup. This theory claims that President John F. Kennedy was assassinated as part of a coup carried out by ultra-right-wing forces within the US power structure. According to the idea, Kennedy's positions on civil rights and nuclear de-escalation, the military-industrial complex, and intelligence agencies made him a threat to hardline interests. The theory says that his murder was meant to stop policy changes and to restore control to conservative military, intelligence, and corporate groups. Lee Harvey Oswald, just like the last JFK theory, he's portrayed as a patsy, while the assassination is framed as a coordinated political overthrow disguised as a lone gunman event. 2003 Angola disappearance. The 2003 Angola disappearance theory refers to reports of people, often workers, travelers, or locals, vanishing under mysterious circumstances during Angola's post-Civil War period. Now, the theory claims that these disappearances were not random, but they were tied to secret military activity, to illegal mining operations, to human trafficking, or hidden foreign interests exploiting the region. Now, some versions say that entire groups were erased to protect resource extraction, arms deals, or classified projects. With limited records, corruption, and restricted access to certain areas, the theory frames Angola as a place where people could disappear completely, leaving no trace and no accountability. Crowd-funded assassinations. Crowd-funded assassinations is the theory that murders can be financed collectively by many anonymous people instead of a single customer. The idea is that online platforms, dark web forums, or cryptocurrency wallets allow individuals to contribute small amounts toward killing a specific target. Once enough money is raised, a hitman or a group carries out the act. Some versions say that this creates plausible deniability since no single person is fully responsible, while others claim that it turns assassinations into decentralized, market-driven operations hidden within normal online activity. Elections fully rigged. This theory says that modern elections are not genuine democratic processes, but they are carefully controlled performances. Now, according to the idea, outcomes are decided in advance by governments, elites, or shadow organizations, with voting used mainly to maintain the illusion of choice. Methods said to be used include manipulated voting machines, altered ballots, controlled media narratives, voter suppression, data tampering, and even psychological influence. Some versions argue that all major parties are part of the same system, meaning that elections don't change real power, only which figure is presented to the public as being in charge. Which this is actually a theory I talked about a long time ago, like in one of my first conspiracy videos. And a lot of you guys said that you guys believed that theory, but the theory was basically that there's no such thing as a political party and that all politicians are working under the same goal, or they're working under the same elite, or however you want to frame it. Adam and Eve were reptilians. This theory claims that the biblical Adam and Eve were not fully human, but they were reptilian beings or hybrids. Now, according to the idea, early humanity was created or guided by an advanced reptilian species that could shapeshift or could disguise itself as human. Now, Adam and Eve are seen as symbolic ancestors of a ruling bloodline and not literal humans, and it's said that they have reptilian DNA that was passed down through elite families. Some versions say that the serpent in the Garden of Eden wasn't an enemy, but it was one of their own, representing hidden knowledge and genetic manipulation, and the true non-human origins of mankind. Alright, and now we are going to get into the last tier of today's video, or this part of the massive conspiracy theory iceberg. So let's go, tier 5. We're getting there, we're getting a little darker, let's do it. Justin Trudeau is Fidel Castro's son. This theory claims that Justin Trudeau is secretly the biological son of Fidel Castro. Now, the idea points to Trudeau's physical resemblance to Castro and his mother Margaret Trudeau's past visits and social connections in Cuba during the 1970s. According to the theory, the real paternity was hidden for political reasons, and Trudeau's rise to power represents a continuation of Castro's influence through bloodline rather than ideology. Ancient automata. The ancient automata theory claims that ancient civilizations built advanced mechanical machines that behaved like early robots. According to the idea, cultures like the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Chinese, or even lost civilizations created self-moving statues, automated servants, and mechanical animals using forgotten technology. Stories describe talking heads, moving guardians, and machines powered by water, air, weights, or even unknown energy sources. Now, some versions say that this knowledge was far more advanced than admitted, and it was later lost or suppressed, while others claim that these machines were precursors to modern robotics, proving that ancient societies understood engineering and mechanics at a level that challenges mainstream history. Smoke circles. The smoke circles theory refers to large, perfectly circular rings of smoke seen floating in the sky with no obvious source. The idea is that these circles aren't natural, but they are caused by secret military tests, by experimental aircraft, underground explosions, or advanced energy weapons venting through the atmosphere. Some versions say that they mark portals opening or closing, UFO activity, or pressure releases from underground bases. Because the rings often appear suddenly, and they hold their shape and then they vanish, the theory claims that they're evidence of hidden technology operating just out of public view. Dogon Tribe. The Dogon Tribe theory claims that the Dogon people of West Africa possessed advanced astronomical knowledge long before modern science. Now, according to the theory, they knew detailed information about the Sirius star system, including invisible companion stars, precise orbital cycles, and cosmic concepts that shouldn't have been observable with the, naked eye. The explanation offered is outside contact, either, ancient visitors, non-human intelligences, or lost advanced civilizations that shared this knowledge. Some versions say that this information was preserved through oral tradition for thousands of years, and it's been hidden in myths, symbols, and even rituals tied to these stars and humanity's true origins. Planet 9. The Planet 9 theory claims that there's a massive undiscovered planet far beyond Neptune, orbiting the sun in deep space. Now, according to the idea, this hidden planet is influencing the orbits of distant objects in the Kuiper Belt, causing strange clustering that can't be explained by known planets. Some versions say that Planet 9 has an extremely long orbit, taking thousands of years to circle the sun. Some people have also claimed that the planet has already been detected, but it's being kept quiet due to fears about its effects, or its origins, or what it could reveal about the solar system's true structure. The Crooked Forest. The Crooked Forest theory focuses on a grove of pine trees in Poland where every tree bends sharply at the base before growing straight upward. Now, the theory claims that the unusual shape wasn't caused by nature, but by something hidden, either experimental technology, electromagnetic fields, gravity anomalies, or even time distortion. Some versions suggest that the area was used for secret military testing, while others claim that the forest sits on a geomagnetic hotspot or near an underground structure affecting growth. The uniform bend across dozens of trees is seen as evidence of an external force acting on them all at once. Charles Wells. The Charles Wells theory claims that a man named Charles Wells appears repeatedly throughout history without aging. According to the idea, photographs, records, or eyewitness accounts place the same individual, the same face, the same build, the same features, across different decades or even centuries. The theory suggests that Wells may be an immortal, a time traveler, or a part of a secret experiment involving longevity or temporal manipulation. Some versions say that he moves quietly through society, he changes identities to avoid detection, and others claim that elites know about him and they study him as proof that aging, time, or death itself can be bypassed. Prison planet. The prison planet theory claims that Earth is not a place of growth or learning, but a containment system for human consciousness. According to the idea, powerful non-human entities trap souls in a cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation, feeding off human suffering, fear, and emotional energy. The physical world is seen as a controlled environment designed to keep people distracted, divided, and unaware of their true nature. Some versions say that memory wipes happen after death to prevent escape, while others claim religions, governments, and materialism are tools used to maintain the prison and to keep humanity compliant. Civil War robotics. The Civil War robotics theory claims that the American Civil War wasn't fought only with muskets and cannons, but also involved hidden advanced technology. According to the idea, secret machines, early robots, automated weapons, or mechanical soldiers were tested during the war and then erased from history. Some versions say that inventors created steam-powered automatons or clockwork weapons funded by military elites. Others claim recovered artifacts and strange battlefield accounts point to technology far beyond the 1860s. The theory frames the Civil War as a covert testing ground for advanced warfare, with the records suppressed to preserve the accepted timeline of technological development. Esoteric Hitlerism. Esoteric Hitlerism is the belief that Adolf Hitler was a part of a hidden occult or cosmic mission rather than just a political leader. The theory claims that Hitler survived World War II or ascended to a higher state of existence, guided by secret knowledge, ancient Aryan myths, or even extraterrestrial forces. Some versions say that Nazi Germany was searching for mystical power, like hollow earth entrances, lost civilizations, or even divine energy, and that the defeat of the Third Reich was only a surface-level event. The theory frames Hitler as a mythic figure whose mission is unfinished and he will return in some transformed way. Stone Head of Guatemala. The Stone Head of Guatemala theory centers on a massive stone sculpture discovered in the Guatemalan jungle, depicting a human head with features that don't clearly match any known Mesoamerica styles. The theory claims that it was created by a lost, highly advanced civilization that existed before recorded history. Some versions say that the face represents a different race of humans or non-human beings, possibly linked to Atlantis or ancient visitors. According to these stories, the site was later destroyed or deliberately buried to suppress evidence that human civilization is far older and way more complex than officially taught. Dog suicide bridges. The dog suicide bridges theory claims that certain bridges cause dogs to intentionally jump to their deaths. Now, the most famous case involves a bridge in Scotland where dogs reportedly leap from the same spot just again and again. According to the theory, animals sense something that humans can't, like supernatural forces, spirits, or interdimensional presences tied to the location. Some versions suggest that the bridges sit on ancient lands, ley lines, or portals that disturb animal perception, compelling dogs to jump without fear or hesitation, as if they were drawn by something that was invisible and it was calling to them. Stone Age space travel. The Stone Age space travel theory claims that ancient humans reached space thousands of years ago using lost or forgotten technology. According to the theory, early civilizations either developed advanced propulsion systems on their own or they were assisted by extraterrestrials. Things like cave paintings and ancient carvings and myths are interpreted as depictions of spacecraft, astronauts, and even space journeys. Some versions say that this knowledge was wiped out by a global catastrophe, resetting civilization and leaving only symbolic traces behind. The theory also suggests that humanity's technological history isn't a straight line, but it's a cycle of advancement and then collapse and then rediscovery. MK Often. MK Often is described as a secret offshoot of MK Ultra focused on using drugs and chemicals to influence human behavior. The theory claims the program explored substances like psychedelics, toxins, and biological agents to manipulate perception, emotions, memory, and decision-making. Now, MK Often experiments aimed to create new methods of interrogation, control, or incapacitation without leaving obvious physical evidence. Some versions say that the research went beyond individuals and looked at broader behavioral influence, with results classified or absorbed into later intelligence programs run by the CIA. Forest stairs. The forest stairs theory claims that staircases found deep in remote forests that often lead nowhere are actually something unnatural and dangerous. According to the theory, these stairs aren't abandoned structures, but they are objects that shouldn't exist in nature. Search and rescue stories say people who touch, climb, or investigate them experience missing time, hallucinations, disappearances, or they just never return at all. Some versions claim that these stairs are portals, traps, or leftover structures from another dimension, while others say that they're bait, like they're placed deliberately to lure, curious humans into something hostile that doesn't want to be seen. Gwen Towers. The Gwen Towers theory claims that a network of tall communication towers across the United States isn't just for emergency broadcasting. According to the theory, these towers emit low-frequency signals capable of influencing human behavior, mood, health, or even your thoughts. Some versions say that they're used for population control, for mind manipulation, or for coordination with other systems like weather modification or surveillance grids. Now, the towers are often described as operating silently in the background, they're always on, and they're deliberately disguised as infrastructure for public safety while secretly forming part of a larger control or monitoring system. SLC Daycare. The SLC daycare theory refers to allegations from the 1980s involving a daycare in Salt Lake City. Now, the theory claims that the daycare was part of a hidden network involved in ritual abuse, underground tunnels, and organized exploitation of children. According to the story, children described secret rooms, masked adults, transportation to other locations, and coordinated silence enforced by powerful figures. Some versions say that evidence was ignored or destroyed and that authorities covered it up to protect influential people. The theory frames the case as part of a wider pattern of hidden abuse rings operating behind, honestly, respectable institutions. Tier 6. Lake City Quiet Pills. Now, Lake City Quiet Pills is about a series of strange Craigslist job ads that showed up in the late 2000s. Now, they looked like normal security or travel work, but they were written in an odd, coded way, and they asked for people with military-style experience. Now, the name itself, Lake City Quiet Pills, hints at silent gunfire and connects a US ammunition factory. Internet users started digging into the posts and found usernames tied to violent incidents, deaths, and overseas attacks. The theory claims that the ads were secret signals used to recruit or to communicate with assassins or covert operatives. Polywater. Polywater was a mysterious substance discovered by Soviet scientists in the 1960s. Now, it looked like ordinary water, but it was thicker and it behaved differently. The theory claims that it was a new form of water with altered molecular structure that could damage normal water on contact. Some feared that it could contaminate oceans and living organisms if it was released. Others believed it had mind-altering or biological effects, and that governments secretly studied it as a potential weapon before quietly shutting the research down. Sphinx water erosion. The Sphinx water erosion claims that the Great Sphinx of Giza is far older than mainstream history says. Now, the idea focuses on deep vertical grooves and rounded shapes on the Sphinx enclosure that look like damage caused by heavy rainfall. Now, since Egypt has been a desert for, thousands of years, this suggests the monument was carved during a much wetter period. That would place its construction thousands of years earlier than the dynastic Egyptians and point to a lost advanced civilization that existed before recorded history. Astral America. Astral America is the idea that the United States exists not only in the physical world, but also in a hidden spiritual or astral realm. This unseen version of the country is believed to influence events, power, and even national identity. The theory suggests that governments and intelligence groups learned how to access this realm through out-of-body travel and secret experiments. Now, control over Astral America is said to shape politics and wars and the rise or fall of the nation on a deeper, unseen level. CIA Lost China 2010. Now, this theory refers to the claim that around 2010, the CIA suffered a massive intelligence collapse inside of China. Now, according to the theory, Chinese authorities identified and dismantled a large network of US informants. Many alleged spies were arrested or executed, and American intelligence lost direct insight into Chinese leadership and their military plans. The cause is said to be either a high-level mole inside of the CIA or a secret breach of CIA communication systems. Now, this event is framed as a major turning point that allowed China to rise with far less foreign interference. The MacDougall experiments. Now, the MacDougall experiments come from early 1900s tests that tried to measure the human soul. A doctor supposedly placed dying patients on special scales and claimed that the body suddenly lost about 21 grams at the moment of death. The theory says that this weight change was the soul leaving the body. Similar tests were attempted on animals with different results. The idea spread into the belief that consciousness has physical mass and that death involves a measurable release of something beyond the body itself. Despair code. Now, despair code is the idea that certain words, numbers, sounds, or symbols are arranged in a hidden way to trigger feelings of hopelessness and emotional collapse. Now, the theory claims that this code is embedded into media, into news cycles, into online content, and even into agriculture. Repeated exposure is said to slowly wear people down, making them easier to control and less likely to resist authority. Some believe that the code works on a subconscious level, bypassing logic and directly influencing your mood, your motivation, and your mental health without, you or people realizing that it is happening. Asemic writing. Asemic writing is presented as writing that looks like language but has no fixed meaning. The theory claims that it is not meaningless at all and instead communicates on a subconscious level. Symbols and shapes are said to bypass logic and speak directly to the mind or emotions. Some believe that it has been used in ancient texts, in occult practices, and modern art to transmit ideas that cannot be expressed with normal words. Now, reading it is not about understanding sentences, but about triggering thoughts or states of awareness beneath conscious thought. Jameson family spiritual warfare. Now, the Jameson family spiritual warfare links the mysterious deaths of the Jameson family to an unseen religious or spiritual conflict. The theory claims that the family believed that they were under attack by dark forces and were engaged in spiritual battles involving prayer, rituals, and extreme beliefs. Their strange behavior before disappearing is framed as preparation for this conflict. The deaths are seen as the result of spiritual warfare rather than a physical crime, suggesting that the family was caught in a struggle between opposing spiritual powers that ultimately consumed them. Blood ghosts. Now, blood ghosts are said to be entities that form from violent death, from intense trauma, or bloodshed tied to a specific location. Now, the theory describes them not as full spirits, but lingering impressions that feed on fear, pain, or emotional energy. They are believed to appear as shadows, stains, or figures near places where murders and battles or even rituals occurred. Now, these entities are thought to replay moments of violence or influence the living, drawing them toward the same destructive emotions that created them. It's kind of like the stoned tape theory that basically just claims that buildings and stones and building materials in general carry a memory like humans do. So if someone died in a house, the walls would capture that memory, and then a haunting is just those walls replaying that. OK Bomb Inside Job. The OK Bomb Inside Job is the claim that the Oklahoma City bombing was not carried out by a lone attacker, but was secretly planned or allowed by elements within the US government. Now, the theory suggests that federal agencies had prior knowledge of the attack or were directly involved in planning and execution. It often points to alleged additional accomplices, unexplained warnings, missing evidence, and the rapid collapse of the building. The bombing is framed as a false flag event used to justify increased surveillance, new laws, and expanded federal power. Codex Gigas. Now, Codex Gigas is a massive medieval manuscript often called the Devil's Bible. Now, the theory claims that it was created by a monk who made a pact with the dark force to complete the book in a single night. Inside are religious texts, strange symbols, spells, medical knowledge, and a full-page illustration of the devil. Now, the book's size and consistency suggest that it was written by one person, which just adds to the overall mystery of this whole thing. Some believe that it contains hidden knowledge, curses, or encoded warnings, and that its true purpose goes far beyond just a religious manuscript. Disney cruise trafficking. Disney cruise trafficking is a conspiracy theory that claims that human trafficking operations are secretly carried out aboard Disney cruise ships. Now, it suggests that the closed environment at sea allows illegal activity to happen without any oversight. The theory points to missing persons cases, restricted areas of ships, and coded symbols as signs of a hidden network operating during cruises. According to the idea, powerful corporate influence keeps investigations quiet and prevents whistleblowers from coming forward, allowing the activity to continue unnoticed by most passengers. Skeleton on the moon. Now, the skeleton on the moon is the claim that a human or humanoid skeleton was discovered on the moon during early space missions. Now, the theory suggests that astronauts either found remains buried in lunar soil or saw evidence during secret missions that never reached the public. According to the idea, this discovery pointed to ancient visitors, lost spacefaring civilizations, or time travelers who reached the moon long before modern humans did. Again, if we ever did. Now, the information was allegedly classified to avoid rewriting human history and to keep the true origins of humanity hidden. Dahmer shapeshifting. Dahmer shapeshifting is a fringe idea that Jeffrey Dahmer was not fully human and that he had the ability to change forms. Now, the theory claims that this allowed him to avoid capture, to lure victims, or to appear harmless when he needed to. Some versions say that he could alter his face or his body, while others claim that he shifted into a non-human entity tied to dark forces. His crimes are framed as part of something inhuman rather than the actions of an ordinary person, suggesting that he was a creature that was hiding in plain sight. Indian blue dogs. Indian blue dogs is the idea that packs of stray dogs in parts of India turned bright blue due to industrial pollution. Now, this theory claims that chemicals dumped into nearby rivers and factories altered the dog's fur color and their behavior. Some versions suggest long-term exposure caused genetic changes or toxic buildup that made the dogs aggressive or sick. The blue color is seen as visible proof of hidden environmental damage being covered up while animals and people continue to be exposed. Forest of Lost Children. Now, the Forest of the Lost Children is a theory about remote forests where children are said to vanish without explanation. Now, these areas are believed to confuse perception, to distort time, or to hide entrances to unseen realms. Now, some versions claim that the forests are alive and they lure children away through sounds, lights, or even familiar voices. Others suggest that the locations sit on thin boundaries between worlds where people can slip through and can't return. The disappearances are framed as part of a repeating pattern tied to the land itself rather than an ordinary accident or a crime. Bo Weevil Jackson. Now, Bo Weevil Jackson is a theory tied to an early blues musician whose life is wrapped in mystery. Now, very little is known about who he really was, where he came from, or what happened to him after a handful of recordings. Now, the theory claims that he was not fully human and he was instead a supernatural figure tied to curses, spirits, or dark forces. Now, his music is said to carry unnatural emotion and hidden messages that affect listeners. His sudden disappearance from history is framed as proof that he was something other than an ordinary person. Temporary autonomous zones. Now, this theory refers to the idea that short-lived pockets of freedom can exist outside normal control. Now, these zones are said to appear briefly during events like protests, festivals, online spaces, or even sudden social movements. Now, while they exist, normal rules, surveillance, and authority supposedly lose power. The theory claims that these moments are intentionally temporary so they cannot be tracked or shut down. Once attention arrives, the zone dissolves and it reappears somewhere else, allowing people to experience freedom without ever forming a permanent target. Alright, let's move on to Tier 7. 4chan is mostly bots. Now, this is the idea that a large portion of activity on 4chan is not real people. The theory claims that automated accounts generate posts, arguments, and trends to shape opinions and to create artificial chaos. These bots are said to push extreme content, to bait users into reactions, and to make fringe ideas appear popular. Some versions suggest that governments, corporations, or private groups run the bots to test influence tactics or to steer narratives. You know, what looks like normal organic culture is framed as a controlled environment driven by automation rather than like normal users or people. The White Woman of Gippsland. Now, the White Woman of Gippsland is a theory tied to Australian folklore about a pale female figure seen wandering forests and roads in the Gippsland region, or Gippsland, I don't know which one it is, but it's one of the two. Now, she is said to appear late at night, often glowing or dressed in white, and she is linked to disappearances and strange encounters. Some versions claim that she is the spirit of a woman who died violently, while others suggest that she predates colonization and is something older tied to the land. Sightings describe her watching silently, leading travelers astray, or vanishing when people get close to her. Incorruptible saints. The incorruptible saints theory is the belief that certain religious figures do not decay after death. Their bodies are said to remain preserved for years or even centuries without embalming. The theory claims that this happens because of divine favor or spiritual purity. Now, some bodies are described as flexible, warm, or giving off a sweet scent long after death. These remains are often displayed in churches and treated as physical proof of holiness, suggesting that the soul's condition can directly affect the physical body even after life ends. Jackalope economy. Jackalope economy is the idea that myths and fake creatures are intentionally used to generate real money and control tourism. The theory claims that the jackalope was created and promoted to sell souvenirs, to attract visitors, and to build regional identity in parts of the United States. Now, over time, it became a self-sustaining economic engine where belief is less important than participation. The myth spreads through museums and roadside stops and pop culture, and it creates jobs and it creates profit. According to the idea, similar creatures are manufactured on purpose to turn folklore into a reliable economic system built on imagination. Kind of like skinwalkers. Oh, you come to Utah's national parks, you'll see some skinwalkers. Or even, I think, isn't there a place in like Arizona where you can like go and pay and park your car and you can look for UFOs in the sky or something like that? Like places like that. That would be considered a jackalope economy. Parasitic rain clouds. Parasitic rain clouds is the idea that some cloud formations are not natural weather systems, but they are living or they are artificial entities. Now, the theory claims that these clouds attach themselves to normal storm systems and feed on moisture, energy, or atmospheric electricity. They are said to linger unnaturally long over certain regions, draining surrounding areas of rainfall or causing extreme weather. Now, some versions suggest that they are biological organisms, while others describe them as secret weather control tools. Their behavior is framed as intentional rather than random, and they move and they persist in ways that resemble almost like feeding patterns. Mars is on Earth. Mars is on Earth is the idea that parts of Earth are actually remnants or reflections of Mars. The theory suggests that ancient Martian terrain was transferred here through massive impacts, through planetary exchange, or advanced technology long before recorded history. Deserts, red rock regions, and unusual landscapes are said to closely match Martian surface features. Some versions claim that Mars once supported life that migrated to Earth after the planet became uninhabitable. Earth is just framed as a hybrid world carrying physical traces of another planet, and it's all hidden, right in plain sight. Lost Boy Larry. Now, Lost Boy Larry is a theory about a child who vanished under strange circumstances and was never officially accounted for. Now, the story suggests that Larry became lost in a specific area and either slipped into a hidden world, was taken by something unknown, or continued to exist unseen and was just nearby. Now, this theory directly relates to the Lost Children Forest, or the Forest of the Lost Children. Basically, this theory says that Lost Boy Larry, or Larry, is at that forest, which is like in between realms, basically. Now, sightings of Lost Boy Larry over the years describe a young boy who does not age, and he appears briefly before disappearing again. The theory basically just says that Larry is trapped between places, neither fully gone nor able to return, turning his disappearance into an ongoing presence rather than just like one single event. Saddam Hussein Remote Viewing Project. Now, this is the idea that Iraq secretly explored psychic spying during Saddam Hussein's rule. Now, the theory claims that the government studied remote viewing to gather intelligence without physical surveillance. Trained individuals were said to mentally view distant locations, military targets, or even enemy plans. The program is framed as a part of a larger effort to compete with Western intelligence methods using non-physical means. Some versions suggest that the project uncovered real information and was kept hidden to avoid revealing how much could be seen without technology. The Flatland UFO Theory. The Flatland UFO Theory suggests that UFOs are not spacecraft from outer space, but they are objects entering our world from a higher dimension. Now, the idea compares humans to flat beings who cannot fully perceive three-dimensional objects. In the same way, these craft appear distorted, shifting, or impossible because only parts of them intersect with our reality. Sudden appearances, instant movement, and shape changes are explained as higher dimensional objects passing through lower space. UFO sightings are framed as a brief cross-section of something far larger and more complex than we can, physically see. Phantom Kangaroo. Phantom kangaroo is the idea that a large, unidentified kangaroo-like creature roams parts of the United States and other regions where kangaroos should not exist. Sightings describe an animal with powerful hind legs, with a long tail, and with the ability to leap great distances. Some versions claim that it escaped from private collectors or secret facilities, while others suggest that it is a surviving prehistoric species or something that's not native to Earth or this dimension or whatever. The creature is said to appear briefly, and it avoids capture, and then it leaves behind these strange tracks before it just vanishes back into remote areas. Deep web boxes. Deep web boxes is the idea that sealed packages sold through hidden parts of the internet contain disturbing or forbidden items. The theory claims that these boxes are shipped anonymously and include things like personal belongings, strange artifacts, or evidence of crimes. Some believe the contents are tied to dark networks that trade in secrets rather than products. Ordering a box is said to kind of be like a gamble, and buyers receive something that is chosen at random, or it's something that's meant specifically for them. The boxes are framed as physical extensions of the deep web, bringing its unseen world into real life. The Grey Goblin of King Charles XII. Now, the Grey Goblin of King Charles XII is a story tied to the Swedish king during his military campaigns. The theory claims that a small gray goblin-like figure followed the king wherever he went, appearing before major battles or moments of danger. It was said to warn him, to guide him, or to silently observe events as they unfolded. Some versions describe it as a guardian spirit bound to the royal bloodline, while others see it as an omen of fate. Now, its disappearance is linked to the king's death, suggesting that its purpose ended with him. Amazon forest was built. Now, this is the idea that the Amazon rainforest is not entirely natural, but it was intentionally shaped by an ancient civilization. Now, the theory claims that large populations once lived there and engineered the land using soil modification, canals, and planned plant growth. Now, the forest is seen as a massive overgrown city that reclaimed itself after its collapse. There are straight lines, geometric clearings, and enriched soil, and those are all, framed as evidence of large-scale design. Rather than just untouched wilderness, the Amazon is described as a constructed environment hiding the remains of a lost advanced society beneath dense vegetation. Chipotle food terrorism. Chipotle food terrorism is a conspiracy theory that claims that food served at Chipotle is intentionally used to make people sick. Now, the idea suggests outbreaks of illness were not accidents, but they were a part of a coordinated effort involving contaminated ingredients or deliberate exposure. Now, some versions frame it as a test of public response, for population control, or just corporate experimentation. The repeated reports of customers getting sick are presented as signs of something organized rather than random, turning everyday Chipotle meals into a hidden method of causing widespread physical distress without any, obvious violence, I guess. Life tide. Life tide is the idea that life itself moves in waves similar to ocean tides. The theory suggests that periods of mass growth, creativity, and population expansion are followed by natural pullbacks of collapse, extinction, or just flat out decline. These cycles are believed to affect civilizations, ecosystems, and even individual lives. Wars, plagues, and cultural resets are framed as low tides, while technological leaps and golden ages are the high tides. Rather than random events, history is seen as rhythmic and inevitable, driven by an unseen force that regulates how much life and complexity can exist at any given time. Lovelock Cave. Lovelock Cave is tied to a story about red-haired giants who once lived in Nevada. The theory claims that these beings were violent cannibals who terrorized local tribes long before modern settlers arrived. According to the story, the giants were eventually driven into a cave and they were trapped inside, where they were then burned alive. Later discoveries of large tools, oversized bones, and strange artifacts in the cave are framed as physical evidence of their existence. The site is described as proof that non-human or giant races once lived alongside early humans and were just erased from history. All right, we're already on to Tier 8. Starting with the Bradbury Building. Now, the Bradbury Building is the idea that the famous Los Angeles building hides secret functions beyond its public design. Now, the theory claims that it was built with intentional symbolism, with hidden passages, and controlled sightlines meant for surveillance, for rituals, or even elite meetings. Now, its unusual layout, its lighting, and the repeated use in films are seen as signs that it represents something deeper than just architecture. Some believe it was used by intelligence groups or secret societies, and that its visibility in pop culture is a way of normalizing or masking its real purpose. The building is framed as a physical node tied to hidden power structures operating in plain sight. Cotton Hollow Giant. Cotton Hollow Giant is a theory about a massive humanoid creature said to live in or around Cotton Hollow. It is described as far taller than a normal human, with heavy footsteps, deep vocal sounds, and the ability to move silently through wooded areas. Sightings often include glowing eyes, large tracks, and a feeling of being watched. Some versions describe it as a flesh and blood giant, while others suggest that it is something older tied to the land itself. The creature is said to appear briefly, to avoid capture, and then just disappear back into remote terrain. Oswald Doppelgangers. Oswald Doppelgangers is the idea that Lee Harvey Oswald was not a single individual, but he was a part of a group of lookalikes used to create confusion. The theory claims that multiple people matching his appearance were seen in different locations at the same time before and after the Kennedy assassination. These doubles were allegedly used to frame him, to plant evidence, and link him to conflicting actions and ideologies. By flooding witnesses with sightings of Oswald behaving differently, the theory suggests that the true organizers could hide behind a manufactured identity and control the narrative of what, really happened. Greys equal future humans. This is basically just the idea that gray aliens are actually humans from the distant future. Now, the theory suggests that humanity evolved into beings with large heads, with thin bodies, and reduced emotion due to technology, genetic engineering, and space travel. Now, these future humans are said to travel back in time to study their own past, to prevent extinction, or to correct timeline mistakes. Abductions are framed as research missions focused on genetics and reproduction. Rather than extraterrestrials, the Greys are described as our descendants trying to understand where they came from and how humanity changed. Melissa Vandella. Melissa Vandella is a theory about a mysterious identity that appears in scattered records, online mentions, and stories without a clear origin. The name is linked to the claims of a woman who existed briefly in public view and then vanished completely. Some versions describe her as a manufactured identity used for experiments, or intelligence work, or for social testing. Others frame her as someone who slipped between systems, leaving behind fragments that suggest that she was erased on purpose. The theory centers on the idea that Melissa Vandella was real, she was important, and then she was deliberately removed from public awareness. Camera heads. Camera heads is the idea that humanoid beings exist with cameras in place of heads, either as living entities or advanced constructs. Now, the theory suggests that they constantly record the world and they act as observers rather than participants in the world. Some versions describe them as tools of surveillance created by governments or corporations, while others frame them as non-human entities that evolved to see rather than to feel. Sightings usually involve silent figures standing still and watching and then just disappearing. The cameras are believed to store or to transmit everything they witness, turning reality itself into recorded data rather than a lived experience. Human intelligence comes from cannibalism. Now, this theory just says that early human intelligence developed through ritual or widespread consumption of other humans. The theory claims that eating human brains or flesh transferred memory, traits, or mental ability, accelerating cognitive of evolution. Now, cannibalism is framed as a deliberate practice rather than desperation, used to absorb knowledge, strength, or even awareness from others. Some versions suggest that this behavior left a permanent imprint on human development and culture. Modern intelligence is described as a leftover effect of this ancient practice, with traces still hidden in mythology, in taboos, and even, subconscious behavior. Ancient history happened in the Middle Ages. Now, this theory says that much of what we call ancient history was actually created or misplaced during medieval times. The theory claims that timelines were artificially stretched and events were pushed far back to invent a deeper past. Figures from Rome and Greece and even Egypt are said to have lived far closer to the Middle Ages than what was recorded. Even castles and technology and the written records are framed as evidence that civilization was, far more advanced later than acknowledged. Now, history is presented as rewritten to hide resets, collapses, or lost empires that existed only, a few centuries ago. Retrocausality. Retrocausality is the idea that events in the future can influence the past. The theory suggests that time does not flow in only one direction and that outcomes can reach backward to shape earlier actions, decisions, or even probabilities. Thoughts, observations, or choices made later are said to subtly affect what already happened. This is often used to explain coincidences, intuition, or moments where reality seems to adjust itself, after the fact. Instead of cause leading to effect, the future and the past are seen as constantly interacting, and they shape each other at the same time. Serbians turn to stone. Serbians turn to stone is a theory based on legends of people in rural Serbia who were said to suddenly petrify. The idea claims that entire individuals were transformed into stone statues after witnessing something forbidden, committing moral violations, or encountering a supernatural force. Rock formations shaped like humans are believed to be the remains of these people just frozen in time. Some versions suggest a curse tied to ancient rituals or sacred land. The stones are framed as warnings left behind, marking places where humans crossed boundaries that they were, not supposed to cross. The Moon of Memphis. The Moon of Memphis is a theory tied to ancient Memphis, Egypt, claiming that the moon was once viewed as a physical object that behaved differently in the past. The idea suggests that ancient people witnessed the moon appearing closer, larger, or even temporarily absent from the sky. Records and symbols and myths are interpreted as descriptions of a time before the moon settled into its current orbit. Some versions claim that the moon arrived later or was placed intentionally, possibly by aliens, which I'm pretty sure we talked about in last video. The theory frames the moon as an artificial or relocated object whose true history was preserved in symbolic form and later misunderstood as mythology. The cereal box conspiracy. The cereal box conspiracy is the idea that cereal packaging is used to subtly influence behavior, especially in children. Now, the theory claims that box designs, like the mascots and colors and even placement of logos and text, are carefully engineered to encourage overconsumption, brand loyalty, and early habit formation. Eyes on mascots are said to angle downward to make eye contact with kids. Games, puzzles, and prizes are framed as training tools that link food with reward. Beyond marketing, some versions suggest that the boxes carry symbols or messaging meant to shape preferences and attention patterns from a very young age. We have never been human. Now, this is the idea that modern humans are not purely biological beings. The theory claims that humanity has always been a blend of biology, technology, and external influence. Tools, language, symbols, and systems are seen as extensions of the body rather than inventions added later. Some versions suggest that humans were shaped or modified by non-human intelligence, a long time ago. Consciousness, culture, and machines are framed as inseparable from what we are. Being human is described as a constructed state that has always depended on forces outside of the natural body. Cometary Earth. Cometary Earth theory is the idea that many key events in Earth's history were caused by repeated comet impacts. The theory claims that comets delivered water, organic material, and even early life to the planet. Major extinctions, climate shifts, and sudden changes in human history are framed as the result of impacts rather than just slow natural process. Ancient myths about fire from the sky are interpreted as memories of these events. Earth's development is described as being shaped by ongoing cosmic bombardment, with comets acting as drivers of destruction, creation, and sudden transformation rather than just this random space debris. Aliens caused bubonic plague. This theory says that the Black Death was not a natural disease, but the result of extraterrestrial interference. The theory claims an alien presence released the plague either accidentally or on purpose to study human population collapse. Some versions suggest the illness was a biological experiment or a form of population control. Medieval reports of strange lights in the sky and sudden outbreaks are, seen as evidence of outside involvement. The plague is described as an event that reshaped humanity under the influence of non-human intelligence rather than natural causes. Ancient Egypt space programs. Ancient Egypt space programs is the idea that ancient Egyptians possessed advanced technology that allowed them to travel beyond Earth. Now, the theory claims that pyramids were not just tombs, but they were power generators or launch structures tied to space travel. Hieroglyphs showing flying objects and strange beings are interpreted as records of spacecraft and astronauts. Some versions suggest that Egyptians had help from non-human intelligence and used this knowledge to explore space or to communicate with beings beyond Earth. Their advanced understanding of astronomy is framed as I mean hands-on experience rather than observation alone. What y'all think of these bitches? I honestly forgot I had these, but I just saw these bad boys on my desk and I was like, sheesh, gotta put these bad boys on, god damn. Maybe every time there's an alien theory, I'll put the alien glasses on. How about that? All right, jokes aside, let's get into tier 9. Facebook content moderators. This is the idea that people hired to remove disturbing material from Facebook were exposed to extreme psychological stress that was quietly ignored. The theory claims that moderators were forced to view graphic violence for long hours with little to no support. Over time, this allegedly led to mental breakdowns, despair, and suicides that were covered up to protect the company's image. NDAs and outsourcing are framed as tools used to keep the true toll hidden while the platform continued to operate at massive scale. The Atlanta blackout of 2017. Now, this refers to a sudden power failure that shut down large parts of the city, including Atlanta's airport. The theory claims that this outage was not an accident, but it was a test of infrastructure vulnerability or a response to a cyber event. Some versions suggest that it was linked to grid control experiments or a warning demonstration. The timing, the scale, and the limited explanations are seen as signs that the blackout was intentional, and it was used to study how a major city would react to a sudden loss of power. Bethesda created Bitcoin. Now, Bethesda created Bitcoin is the idea that the video game company secretly designed Bitcoin as a long-term experiment. The theory claims that the mysterious creator was actually a team that was testing digital scarcity, in game economies and player behavior on a global scale. The rise and fall of value is framed as a live simulation similar to virtual worlds. References to vaults and numbers and future collapse themes in their games are seen as hints that Bitcoin was an extension of their world building rather than a financial, invention. Enchanted websites. Enchanted websites is the belief that certain websites are designed to have psychological or spiritual effects beyond normal content. The theory claims that specific layouts, colors, symbols, and hidden code can alter mood, focus, or even perception. Spending time on these sites is said to create feelings of calm, obsession, or disorientation without obvious cause. Some believe that they act as digital rituals, while others see them as gateways that subtly change how users think. The experience is framed as intentional enchantment rather than simple design choice. The day the Earth screamed. The day the Earth screamed is an idea that Earth itself released a massive sound or vibration that was felt rather than heard. The theory claims that this event occurred suddenly and it caused fear, panic, or physical sensations across wide areas. Some versions describe it as the planet reacting to damage, pressure, or imbalance. Others think it was a warning signal or awakening moment. Reports of unexplained booms and deep rumbling are treated as fragments of this event, suggesting that Earth is a living system capable of expressing itself. Deep sea lab techs. Now, deep sea lab techs is the idea that hidden research stations exist deep beneath the ocean where advanced experiments are carried out. The theory claims that technicians live and work in isolation for long periods, maintaining technology not meant for public knowledge. These labs are said to study unknown life forms, underwater anomalies, or recovered objects that did not originate on Earth. Contact with the surface is described as limited and controlled. The ocean's depth is framed as the perfect place to hide research that would raise questions if conducted on land. The 66 books of the Bible. Now, the 66 books of the Bible theory claims that the modern Bible is a heavily edited collection chosen from many more ancient texts. The idea suggests that early authorities selected specific books to shape belief, power, and doctrine while excluding others that contained forbidden teachings. Lost writings are said to describe reincarnation, cosmic history, or direct spiritual power that threatens centralized control. The number 66 is treated as intentional rather than coincidental. The Bible is framed as a curated document designed to guide humanity along a narrow spiritual path. Smithsonian suppression. Now, this is the claim that major archaeological discoveries are hidden to protect the accepted version of human history. The theory suggests that oversized skeletons, advanced ancient tools, and evidence of lost civilizations were collected, and then they were removed from public view. Museums are framed as filings rather than archives, showing only what fits current timelines. Discoveries that challenge evolution, human size, or technological progress are said to disappear into storage. The institution is described as quietly shaping what humanity is allowed to know about its true past. Highway trolls. Highway trolls is the idea that strange humanoid beings live near isolated roads and bridges. Now, the theory claims that they appear late at night, sometimes crouched under overpasses or standing near the shoulder. Sightings describe distorted bodies, reflective eyes, and sudden movements toward vehicles. Some versions say that they feed on fear, while others describe them as territorial creatures guarding certain stretches of road. Disappearances and accidents and even breakdowns are framed as encounters rather than just coincidence, suggesting that the highways pass through places that aren't meant for humans. Red rooms. Red rooms are described as hidden live streams where extreme violence is broadcasted for a private audience. Now, the theory claims that these rooms exist on hidden networks and require special access, payment, or even maybe, invitations. Content is said to be interactive, allowing viewers to influence what happens on screen. Some versions suggest that the streams are fake, while others insist that they are real and they are protected by powerful groups. Red rooms are framed as literally like the darkest corner of the internet, where anonymity removes all limits and human suffering becomes entertainment for elites or for rich people or for, whoever. Twin Towers nuked. This is the theory that nuclear devices were used during the destruction of the World Trade Center. The theory claims that explosions, heat levels, and debris patterns point to nuclear reactions rather than conventional collapse. Reports of glowing metal, sudden disintegration, and health effects are framed as signs of radiation exposure. The event is described as a controlled demolition on a scale meant to look like something else. According to the theory, the truth was hidden to avoid global panic and political fallout. OJ covered for Son. This theory is an alternative narrative that claims that the investigation into the OJ Simpson murders shifted focus away from other possible explanations. The theory suggests that attention was deliberately concentrated on OJ Simpson, while other leads involving family dynamics were ignored or they were redirected. Things like evidence handling and witness statements and even media framing are seen as kind of evidence of this redirection. The trial is framed as a spectacle that obscured deeper questions. So according to the idea, the real story was buried beneath controversy, publicity, and a case that became more about image than the actual truth. Moon built by NASA. Oh, this is kind of like an alien theory, so we'll pop these bitches on. Moon built by NASA is the idea that the moon was heavily altered or partially constructed using advanced technology. The theory claims that space missions did more than just explore, and they instead reshaped the moon's surface, interior, or its orbit. Some versions suggest that hollow sections, artificial structures, or monitoring systems were installed. The moon is framed as a platform for observation, communication, or long-term control, rather than it just being a natural object that we're all just looking at. According to the theory, the moon's role in tides and behavior is part of an engineered system that is just tied to Earth. Google owns 23andMe. This is the theory that genetic testing data is ultimately controlled by a major tech company. Google. The theory claims that DNA samples are not just used for ancestry, but for a long-term data mapping tied to health, behavior, and identity. Genetic profiles are framed as the most valuable data possible, allowing prediction rather than reaction. The connection to Google suggests that this information could be used to shape medicine, insurance, advertising, or population-level planning, while users believe that they are simply just learning about their family history and who their great uncle was. Indigo children. Indigo children is the belief that a new generation of humans was born with heightened awareness and unusual abilities. These children are described as highly intuitive, resistant to authority, and sensitive to emotion and injustice. The theory claims that they arrived to disrupt broken systems and to push humanity toward a higher state of consciousness. Behavioral differences are seen as signs of evolution rather than just a disorder. Indigo children are seen as transitional beings meant to challenge outdated structures and guide society through major spiritual and cultural change. Verde treasure. Verde treasure is a theory about a massive hidden cache of gold and artifacts buried in the American Southwest. Now, the story claims that Spanish explorers or secret groups hid enormous wealth in remote canyons and mountains near the Verde River. Things like maps, symbols, and coded carvings are said to mark the location. Some versions suggest that the treasure was protected by traps or by guardians. The theory kind of paints this land as holding riches intentionally kept hidden to prevent discovery and redistribution. That theory to me sounds like it belongs in the next Outer Banks season. If you guys have seen Outer Banks, then this is definitely an Outer Banks theory right here. I just leaked what the new season is about. Agriculture doomed civilizations. This is the idea that farming itself leads societies towards collapse. The theory claims that once humans settled into large-scale agriculture, they became dependent on fragile systems that encouraged hierarchy, resource depletion, and disease. Civilizations are said to rise quickly and then fall once the land is exhausted or the climate shifts. Hunter-gatherer life is framed as a more stable, long-term solution or thing. According to the theory, agriculture is a trap that repeatedly pushes human societies into cycles of growth followed by collapse. Old West giant grasshoppers. Old West giant grasshoppers is the claim that enormous grasshoppers once plagued parts of the American frontier. These insects were described as large enough to darken the sky, to destroy entire towns, and to strip farmland in hours. The theory suggests that they were far bigger and more aggressive than recorded, and that their true scale was later minimized. Some versions frame them as a lost species wiped out suddenly, and the swarms, their swarms are described as a forgotten natural disaster erased from mainstream history. Nexus 7. Nexus 7 is the idea that a hidden convergence point exists where multiple realities, timelines, or systems overlap. The theory claims that certain locations act as gateways that intensify strange events like disappearances, glitches, or altered perception. The number 7 is treated as symbolic of alignment and transition. Some versions suggest that governments monitor these areas due to their instability. So Nexus 7 is framed as a structural flaw in reality itself, where normal rules weaken and things slip through unnoticed. Chinese facial recognition boom. Now, the Chinese facial recognition boom is the idea that rapid expansion of facial recognition technology is part of a large-scale social control system. The theory claims that cameras combined with artificial intelligence allow constant tracking of a movement, of behavior, and even emotion. Now, the data is said to shape access to jobs, travel, and public life. The speed of deployment is framed as intentional rather than experimental. So according to the idea, the system is a prototype for future population management models that could later spread beyond national borders. And ladies and gentlemen, we are at tier 10, the last tier of this part. Starting with sentient water. Sentient water is the theory that water isn't just a substance. It has awareness. It's believed to absorb information from emotions, words, sound, and even the environment. Then it carries that information forward, kind of like a memory. Like water in your body could react to your mood and affect your health, while oceans and rivers could store the emotional history of places where major events happened. Some versions go further and say that water can communicate, influence decisions, and sync people up through a shared water network that connects all living things. Demolition elves. Demolition elves are described as small humanoid figures that appear shortly before major disasters. People report seeing them near buildings, roads, bridges, or disaster sites in the hours or days leading up to a collapse, an explosion, or a deadly accident. They are often described as moving with purpose, watching quietly, or behaving like they are inspecting the area. The theory frames them as omens or agents of destruction, either predicting catastrophe or somehow triggering it. Then it's said that after the event, the elves disappear or they vanish, leaving only scattered sightings that seem tied to the same pattern of sudden disaster. Apparently, there have been sightings of demolition elves right, before Chernobyl, in Hiroshima, and I'm sure you can probably find some people reporting these elves before, anything, but who knows if it's true or not. Project Blue Book missing reports. Now, Project Blue Book missing reports is the claim that the US government collected far more UFO cases than the public ever got to see. The theory says that the strongest incidents were pulled from the archive and that they were locked away, leaving behind only the less convincing files. Missing reports are believed to include close-range sightings, multiple witness events, radar tracking, and encounters where objects showed impossible speed or movement. Wait, I forgot this was an alien theory. The idea is that Blue Book acted like a public-facing project, while the most serious cases were quietly diverted into a separate system for classification and long-term secrecy. Curse clickbait. Curse clickbait is the idea that certain posts online are built like traps. You click a video, an image, or a link, and something negative follows you afterward. It might be a sudden run of bad luck, constant anxiety, nightmares, or the feeling that your thoughts are no longer fully your own. The content spreads because curiosity does the work, and sharing it pulls more people into the same effect. Some versions describe it as a digital curse attached to the act of viewing, where attention becomes the doorway and the screen becomes the delivery method. Pope Joanne. Pope Joanne is the story that a woman secretly became pope by living as a man. She is said to have entered the church disguised, rose through the ranks, and then was eventually elected as pope under a male identity. The theory claims that she ruled for a period without anyone, realizing that it was a woman. Her secret supposedly came out suddenly during a public moment, after which she was removed from power and her existence was scrubbed from official records. The story frames her as a real leader hidden from history because it would, disrupt the idea that church authority was always exclusively male. One-worldness. One-worldness is the belief that everything is part of one connected consciousness. People and animals and objects and nature. They seem separate, but underneath it's all one system experiencing itself through different forms. Thoughts and actions are said to ripple across the whole, which is why synchronicities, shared emotions, and sudden gut feelings can feel like signals rather than coincidence. Individual identity is treated like a temporary mask, not the full truth. Reality is described as one continuous living field, and every mind is basically a node inside the same larger awareness. Ningens. Ningens are described as massive humanoid creatures living in the icy waters near Antarctica. They're usually said to be pure white, extremely large, and shaped like a person with a head, torso, and long arms. Now, witnesses describe seeing them rise near ships, float at the surface, or move just beneath the water like a pale outline. Some versions say that they can change shape to avoid being identified, blending into waves or ice. The theory frames them as an unknown species that stays hidden because the Southern Ocean is remote, it's deep, and it's rarely explored. Sun collapse. The sun collapse is the theory that the sun could suddenly destabilize and change in a way that hits Earth fast. It is described as a rapid shift in output, dimming, violent flares, or some internal failure that throws the whole solar system out of balance. The theory treats the sun like a fragile engine rather than a steady clock. Strange solar behavior is framed as warning signs, with the claim that the real risk is being hidden to avoid panic. Now, if it happens, the result is immediate disruption to weather, crops, power grids, and literally anything that depends on sunlight and stable seasons. Shadow subway. Shadow subway is the idea that there is a hidden underground transit system running beneath major cities, separate from public subway lines. It is described as a network of sealed tunnels, unmarked platforms, and restricted stations used for covert movement. Some versions say that it connects government buildings, military sites, and airports, so people and materials can be transported without being seen. Reports of locked doors in stations, unexplained service tunnels, and late-night trains with no passengers are treated as clues that a second subway exists alongside the one that everyone knows and loves, right? Ghosts are biological. Ghosts are biological is the idea that ghosts are not spirits at all, but they are living organisms or natural life forms that we rarely detect. Instead of being dead people, they are described as creatures made of energy, plasma, or some kind of thin matter that can drift through walls and appear as shadows or figures. They feed off heat, electricity, or emotion, which explains why activity spikes around fear and high stress. Hauntings are framed as wildlife encounters, with certain buildings acting like habitats. What looks supernatural is treated as biology operating outside the range of normal human senses. The phone mafia. The phone mafia is the idea that an organized criminal network controls parts of the phone world behind the scenes. It claims that crews buy stolen phones in bulk, they clone SIM cards, and run SIM swap takeovers to steal accounts and money. They are also said to have insiders at carriers who sell customer data, remove blacklists, and reroute numbers. Robocalls, fake text links, and burner phone supply chains are framed as one connected system. Phones become both the target and the weapon, letting the network track people, drain their accounts, and then just disappear. Living stick figures. Living stick figures is the idea that simple drawn figures can become real entities. It claims that certain symbols, doodles, or stick people sketches act like blueprints that invite something to inhabit the shape. Once created, the figure is said to move, watch, or influence the person who drew it, especially if it is repeated or shared. Some versions say they live in the space between imagination and reality, and they feed on attention. The more someone thinks about the drawing, the more solid it becomes, until it feels like the stick figure has its own presence and intent. Trump time travel. Trump time travel links Donald Trump to a supposed time travel secret. Now, it leans on an obscure 1800s novel by Ingersoll Lockwood featuring a character named Baron Trump and another book about an outsider from New York becoming president, with protests in the streets. People treat those details as predictions and then connect Trump to his uncle, John G. Trump, a scientist who reviewed Nikola Tesla's papers after Tesla died. The leap is that Tesla's work included time travel ideas and the family gained access to them. Epstein Royal Connections. Epstein Royal Connections links Jeffrey Epstein to British royalty and claims that those relationships were not casual. It frames his private jets, his parties, and his social access as a pipeline into elite circles where influence and favors could be traded. The claim is that Epstein used introductions to powerful people, including a senior royal, to boost his protection and his status. Some versions add a blackmail angle with hidden recordings and compromat used to gain leverage over high-level figures, shaping decisions behind the scenes where the public only saw the social side. Padma McCord. Padma McCord is an internet mystery around a name that pops up in odd places online, from domain for sale sites and real estate pages to copyright claims hitting videos that mention it. The theory is that the identity is not a normal person, but a coordinated system, a bot network, an ARG, or a front used to scrub references, flood search results with noise, and make the name untouchable. When people like myself talk about it, allegedly their videos get taken down, and then the name reappears on new sites, and it keeps the trail alive while staying impossible to pin down. So if this video for some reason has an abnormally low amount of views, or if it's age restricted or anything, could be because of that. So let's pray that doesn't happen. Please don't do it. Door dogs. Door dogs are described as strange dog-like entities that appear at doorways, windows, and thresholds, especially at night. Now, people report hearing nails on wood, sniffing, low growls, or scratching right outside the door, But then when they look, nothing's there. The theory treats thresholds as weak points where things can peek through, and door dogs use that gap to watch or to test a home. Some versions say that opening the door invites them in, while others claim that they can slip through cracks once they are acknowledged. They show up repeatedly, almost like they're trying to learn the people inside. Tier 11. Corporate blood rituals. Corporate blood rituals is the claim that some powerful governments are tied to secret ceremonies involving blood as a way to gain influence, wealth, or even protection. Now, the idea says that executives and insiders participate in private events that look like ancient sacrifice traditions, hidden behind exclusive parties, private clubs, and invite-only gatherings. Symbols, strange art, and coded language in branding or corporate culture are treated as hints of these blood rituals. Some versions say that these rituals are used to bind loyalty, to control careers, and keep members silent, with the fear of exposure acting like an extra layer of enforcement. Hindu milk miracle. Hindu milk miracle refers to an event where people claimed that Hindu statues began drinking milk offered to them. Devotees poured or spooned milk toward idols of Ganesha and other deities, and witnesses said that the liquid visibly disappeared as if it was absorbed by the statue. Now, reports spread fast, and similar scenes were described at temples and homes across India and in other countries that same day. For many, it was treated as a sign of divine presence, a moment where the gods directly responded to worship through a physical, visible reaction. Unfavorable semicircle. Unfavorable Semicircle is a YouTube mystery centered on a channel that uploaded a huge flood of strange videos in 2015. Now, most clips were abstract visuals, static colors, single dots, and harsh distorted sounds, usually tilted with random numbers or the Sagittarius symbol. People digging through frames and audio claimed that the uploads hid messages, coordinates, or layered images, almost like a number station or covert communication system, just disguised as complete and utter, nonsense. After media attention, the channel was taken down, which only fed the idea that the most important material was never meant to, stay public. The Invisible War. The Invisible War is the idea that the real conflict shaping the world is happening out of sight. Now, instead of, tanks and soldiers, it is fought through influence, fear, belief, and control of attention. Now, competing groups are seen as targeting minds, emotions, and culture to steer elections, start unrest, to weaken communities, and to rewrite what people accept as normal. Strange spikes in violence, sudden social shifts, and non-stop crisis cycles are framed as coordinated moves in this hidden fight. Everyday life becomes a battlefield where the main weapon is perception. Titanic didn't sink. Now, this theory claims that the Titanic that went down in 1912 was not the actual Titanic. Now, the story says that the Titanic was quietly swapped with its nearly identical sister ship, Olympic, after Olympic was damaged and became too expensive to fix. The plan was to send the disguised Olympic out as the Titanic and then to stage an emergency and then just collect like a massive insurance payout. Now, there are details like some odd construction marks, last-minute changes, and the two ships, similar layouts are treated as hints that the original ship that sank wasn't the actual Titanic. So basically, the sinking of the Titanic was a planned financial rescue that turned into a real disaster. Zapruder film was faked. Now, the Zapruder film was faked claims that the famous home movie of the Kennedy assassination was altered to control what the public believes happened in Dealey Plaza. Now, the idea is that the original footage showed details that were too clear, like the direction of the fatal shot, the timing of the reactions, or evidence of more than one shooter. So the film was allegedly seized quickly, and then it was edited through frame removal, frame insertion, and optical effects to change head movements, to hide key moments, and to just smooth over inconsistencies. Now, what we see today as the Zapruder film is treated as a finished version built to support, an official story. The Secret Commonwealth. The Secret Commonwealth is the idea that a hidden society exists alongside humans, and it's made up of these beings often called fairies or other in-between creatures. Now, they supposedly live in a parallel layer of the world. They share the same land, but they stay unseen. Sightings and old accounts describe them moving through hills, ruins, forests, and ancient sites using glamour to disguise themselves. Now, people who vanish, lose time, or wake up, far away from where they fell asleep are sometimes linked to encounters with this hidden group. Some versions claim that they trade, kidnap, and observe humanity while staying out of reach. RPG insanity training. Now, this theory is the idea that certain role-playing video games are secretly designed to condition people into unstable or even violent behavior. Now, the claim is that organized crime groups, often named as the Yakuza, I believe that's how you say it, they either pressure or they pay game companies to build games that reward obsession and numb empathy through endless repetition and constant combat. Now, over time, players are said to get desensitized, more impulsive, and easier to steer into real-world chaos or even recruitment, while everyone else just thinks that it is, just straight-out entertainment. Moonless nights. Now, moonless nights is the claim that the moon sometimes disappears on nights when it should be clearly visible. Now, people report a normal clear sky with stars out, but there just being no moon at all, even during phases when it should be, bright. The idea is that the moon is being covered, powered down, or hidden on purpose, either because it is artificial, it is a projection, or it has some kind of, cloaking system. Some versions tie it to secret operations, strange events, or shifts in human mood and behavior when the moon goes missing. The Delaware hoax. The Delaware hoax is the idea that Delaware is basically a manufactured state. Now, it claims that Delaware is either completely fake or it exists only as a legal shell, like a handful of offices and P.O. boxes used for paperwork. Now, the reason is, corporate power. Delaware is framed as a tool for creating companies, for hiding ownership, and for moving money through friendly laws. Now, signs and maps and even the news and just, people from Delaware in general are treated as part of the illusion that keeps the system running, while the real Delaware is just a small administrative hub pretending to be this big, full state. So if you're from Delaware, no, you're not. Facebook experiments. Facebook experiments is the idea that the platform runs large-scale tests on users without them realizing it. Now, it claims that feeds are quietly adjusted to push certain emotions, opinions, and behaviors, kind of like, making people more anxious, more angry, or more likely to spend their schmeckles. Now, the changes are described as subtle, like which posts you see first, what gets buried, and what shows up repeatedly until it just starts to feel normal. Now, some versions go further and say that these experiments are shared with outside groups to study crowd psychology. So Facebook basically becomes a lab where billions of people are the test subjects. Ural relief map. The Ural relief map is about a strange stone slab reportedly found in Russia that looks like a detailed three-dimensional map of the Ural region. It is described as showing terrain, rivers, and engineered features like canals, dams, and long straight water routes that seem too precise to be natural. Now, the big claim is that it was made by an ancient civilization with advanced surveying and construction knowledge long before modern mapping tools existed. Some versions even go a little bit further and say that it was created with help from non-human intelligence. It's basically a carved blueprint of a managed landscape. Stairway to Hell, Staffordshire. Now, Stairway to Hell in Staffordshire is a local legend about a set of stairs or a sunken passage where people claim that the air changes and the space feels wrong. Now, the story says that these steps led to a sealed underground void, an old tunnel, or a hidden chamber that acts sort of like a gateway. People describe hearing whispers, feeling sudden dread, or sensing something watching them as they go down the stairs. Some versions claim that animals refuse to approach and electronics act strange. The theory frames the stairway to hell as a real threshold point where something beneath the ground can reach up and affect anyone who gets too close. All right, now let's move on to Tier 12. Roanoke Colony still exists. Now, this theory says that the lost colony of Roanoke never died out, it just disappeared into the wilderness and kept going in secret. Now, instead of being wiped out, these settlers are believed to have merged with nearby native groups, they changed their names, and then they moved inland to avoid any conflict. Now, over time, the community allegedly became a hidden offshoot society that stayed isolated for generations. Now, the word Croatoan that was carved into the tree that John White found is treated like a deliberate marker pointing to where they went. The modern angle is that traces of this group still survive through family lines, remote settlements, or traditions that never fully entered recorded history. Milkwalker. Milkwalker is a strange milk carton mascot that showed up on Dairy Gold cartons with safety tips for kids, asking them to remember their full name, their address, and their phone number. Now, the conspiracy basically just turns that into something a lot darker. It says that the character is alive, the questions are a way to collect personal details, and once the Milkwalker knows where you live, it can find you. It's described as walking on long mechanical legs, appearing at night, and taking children while hiding behind a friendly "be safe" message that reads more like a warning than just advice. Kanye Quest 3030. Now, Kanye Quest 3030 is a indie game that shows up online as a crude RPG where Kanye West goes on a surreal quest through pop culture chaos. Now, the conspiracy treats it as more than just a joke. I mean, people claim that it hides secret messages in its dialogue and its music and random events, almost like a coded file disguised as a game. Now, some versions say that it was made to influence players through repetition and shock, or to act as a digital curse that sticks with you even after you finish the game. Now, the deeper you dig in this game, I mean, the more it feels like, it just wants your attention, kind of. Is what I've heard. That's what I've heard. Zug Island. Now, Zug Island is a heavily restricted industrial island in the Detroit River. Now, the mystery starts with the Windsor hum, a low vibration people say they can feel and hear across the water. The theory claims that the factories are a cover for a sealed-off facility where secret testing happens, like high-powered generators, underground drilling, or unusual signal equipment. The constant security and the limited access are treated as the point, because whatever is running there is not meant to be observed. The hum is framed as the audible leak of a hidden project operating beneath the plant. Martian rover voice recordings. Now, the Martian rover voice recordings is the claim that Mars rovers have picked up voices and other non-mechanical sounds in their transmissions. Now, people say that there were faint whispers, words, and strange tones hidden under static or wind noise, sometimes sounding like speech or, distant calls. The idea is that these clips were captured by rover microphones or radio systems, and then they were cleaned up by listeners who swear that they can hear phrases. Some versions connect it to living beings on Mars, an underground base, or a rover picking up signals from something that knows that it's being watched. And then it's said that NASA just quietly, buried the raw audio. The McDonald's Blob. Now, the McDonald's Blob is a story about McDonald's creating something unnatural behind the building. Now, the story says that an employee was told to dump used grease in the same spot every single week. Over time, it built into a foul pit that started drawing animals into it so that it could feed. Then the sightings shift to stranger things, a pale humanoid crawler and other creatures showing up like the grease was bait. Some versions describe the mass itself becoming a living blob that moves or reacts. The idea is that McDonald's accidentally or knowingly created a hidden feeding ground that should not exist. The Knights Templar Catacombs. The Knights Templar Catacombs is the idea that the Templars built or took over a hidden network of underground tunnels and chambers to move people and valuables without being seen. Now, these catacombs are described as sealed routes under old cities and religious sites, used for secret meetings, initiations, and storing relics and treasure. Now, when the Order was hunted down, the underground system supposedly became their escape plan, letting members vanish while their wealth stayed hidden. Now, some versions say that the tunnels are still guarded or quietly used by modern groups tied to these same secrets. Area 51 waste burning. Now, Area 51 waste burning is the theory that Area 51 has long disposed of classified materials by burning it in open pits. The idea is that old aircraft parts, chemicals, fuels, and experimental leftovers were set on fire to erase evidence quickly. Now, the smoke is described as carrying toxic particles across the desert, exposing workers and nearby communities. Illness and long-term health damage are framed as the human cost of keeping secret programs hidden. The burning is treated as both a disposal method and a way to destroy anything that could prove what was being built and tested at Area 51. Stationary Earth. Stationary Earth is the claim that Earth does not move through space the way that we are told. Now, instead of spinning and orbiting, Earth is described as fixed and the sky moves around it. The sun, the moon, the stars, they're all framed as objects circling above Earth. Now, some versions say that the motion we feel is a trick of perspective or engineered perception, and that keeping people convinced that they are on a spinning ball is part of a control system. Gravity is often replaced with ideas about density, buoyancy, or electromagnetic forces holding everything in place. Iraq Giants Rumors. So now this is a story that US troops in Iraq or Afghanistan supposedly encountered a massive red-haired humanoid living in a remote cave. Now, in the story, a patrol unit finds the cave, the giant charges with a spear or a weapon, and then the soldiers fire until it goes down. The body of this giant is described as 12 to 15 feet tall and unusual heavy, and then it was quickly loaded into a helicopter or a cargo plane and taken to a secret facility. The theory says that witnesses were threatened into silence and any photos or reports were buried. Bible is the future. Bible is the future is the idea that the Bible is not mainly a record of the past, but a coded description of events that have not yet happened. Things like stories and names and symbols are treated like forecasts for modern politics, wars, technology, and even global collapse. Now, prophecy becomes a timeline, with patterns repeating until they match a final end stage. Some versions claim that key passages are encrypted, meaning that the real message only becomes clear once history reaches the right moment. Reading scripture turns into decoding a map of what is coming, not studying what it once was. That makes sense. Ebola worship. Now, Ebola worship is the idea that certain cults or secret groups treat Ebola like a sacred force instead of a disease. Now, the virus is framed as a purifier that selects who lives and who dies, so outbreaks become rituals, offerings, or signs of spiritual power. Some versions claim that infected areas are targeted on purpose to spread fear and chaos, and then interpreted as proof that the group is blessed or protected. So basically, this theory is just saying that Ebola is used as a symbol of control through sickness, with death treated as part of devotion rather than a tragedy. ICBM black budgets. Now, this is the theory that huge parts of nuclear missile spending are hidden in classified funding streams so that the public never sees the real scale. Now, the theory claims that money labeled as routine defense work actually pays for secret missile upgrades, new warheads, underground facilities, and alternate launch systems. It suggests that the official nuclear arsenal is only the visible layer, while a parallel modernization effort runs off of the books with private contractors and restricted oversight. Any gaps in transparency are treated as proof that the program is larger, newer, and more advanced than was ever admitted. All right, let's go on to Tier 13, Roswell fossils. Roswell fossils is the idea that what was recovered near Roswell was not just wreckage, but preserved biological material. And super quickly, if you are not familiar with the Roswell accident or incident, basically in Roswell, New Mexico, there was a huge claim that a UFO crashed and that the military recovered aliens. Basically, in a gist, there you go. Now, the theory says that instead of fresh alien bodies, the claim is that responders found fossilized remains or mineralized tissue, like something ancient that had been buried or stored and then was exposed by the crash. Some versions describe fragments that looked like bone, dried skin, or hardened organs, collected and moved into a secure lab. Now, the bigger implication is that the Roswell event revealed evidence of non-human life that existed long before the modern era and was being transported, or it was kept hidden. Life on the sun. Life on the sun is the idea that the sun is not just a ball of burning gas, but a habitat for living beings. The theory claims that there are organisms made of plasma or energy that can survive inside extreme heat and magnetic fields. Sunspots and solar flares are interpreted as movements, feeding, or communication from these entities. Some versions say that they are ancient intelligence that shaped life in the solar system or watches Earth from its source. The theory basically just says that the sun is a living world with its own right, with activity on its surface treated like behavior instead of weather. The Beatles never existed. Now, the Beatles never existed is a theory that the band was a manufactured project rather than just four friends who naturally became famous. Now, it claims that the members were selected, they were trained, and then they were shaped into characters to influence youth culture, fashion, politics, and consumer habits. Songs and public events are seen as carefully planned messaging, with their rise used to steer the direction of music and attitudes worldwide. Some versions push it even further and say that the recordings were created by studio teams, with the public-facing Beatles acting as performers where while the real creators stayed hidden, behind the whole band. Ongoing MK Ultra. Ongoing MK Ultra is the idea that the CIA's mind control work never ended. It just changed names and they changed their methods. It claims that modern versions use a mix of drugs, sleep disruption, hypnosis, and psychological conditioning to break people down and to reshape their behavior. Some versions say that it expanded into tech, using phones, audio tones, and targeted media to steer emotions and decision making. Now, individual test subjects are described as being pushed into paranoia, obedience, or public meltdowns, while the program stays invisible through secrecy, contractors, and plausible cover stories. Sleep isn't necessary. Sleep isn't necessary is the idea that humans do not truly need sleep, but they have just been conditioned to it. Or I guess we have been conditioned to it. The theory claims that sleep is a control mechanism that takes people offline for a third of their lives, making them easier to manage and to be, less productive. It suggests that the body can be trained to run without sleep through specific breathing, diet, and mental practices, and that ancient groups supposedly never slept, and that's why they accomplished so much. Some versions say that sleep is only needed because of modern stress and toxins, while others claim that dreams are used to influence memory and behavior when the mind is most open. And it's also like, hey, if we had if every single human had an extra 12 hours in their day, we're right here right now. If we never slept, we'd probably be right here. But they probably don't want us not sleeping, because then we'd uncover too much. We'd have too much time to dig deep. Solar diet. Solar diet is the idea that some people can live mostly or entirely on sunlight instead of food. Now, it claims that the body can absorb energy directly from the sun, converting a light into nourishment and reducing the need to eat or drink. Followers describe a shift where hunger fades, weight stabilizes, and energy increases as the body switches its fuel. Some versions frame it as spiritual, saying that light feeds the soul first and the body follows. Others describe it as a hidden human ability that was once common, then suppressed so people stayed dependent on food systems. But hey, I'm not a doctor, and whoever made this theory is not a doctor, but that's just their theory. Baby monitor portals. Now, this is the theory that baby monitors can act like gateways and not just speakers. Some parents have reported hearing voices that are not in the house, footsteps, breathing, or even conversations that sound like they come, from somewhere else entirely, not like, the room that their baby's sleeping in. Some versions say that certain frequencies line up with a thin spot in reality, so the monitor accidentally tunes into other places or other times. Now, a kind of scarier angle is that something notices that it is being listened to and it starts responding, and it uses the monitor to get attention, to get closer, or to even like slip into our dimension into the room where the monitor's in. Humans were the first organisms. Now, this basically just says that humans did not evolve from simpler life forms, and instead we came first. The theory claims that humanity is the original template for life on Earth, and everything else branched off from humans through degeneration, modification, or deliberate engineering. It frames fossils and evolutionary history as either misread, planted, or describing offshoot species that appeared after humans. Basically, just according to this theory, humans are not the end result of nature. They are the starting point, with plants and animals and microbes arriving later as secondary life kind of built around us. The universal mind is not sane. This theory says that reality comes from one giant shared consciousness, and that consciousness is unstable. Instead of the universe being calm and orderly, it is described as a mind with cracks, mood swings, and obsessive patterns. Random cruelty, repeating tragedies, and strange contradictions in life are treated as symptoms of that instability. In this view, people are like thoughts inside a confused brain, trying to act normal while the source mind keeps generating fear, chaos, and broken logic. Glitches, coincidences, and surreal moments are framed as brief flashes of the universe's underlying mental disorder. Privately owned nuclear weapons. Privately owned nuclear weapons is the claim that not every nuclear weapon is controlled by a government. Some versions say that a few warheads vanished during the Cold War and were quietly sold through black markets. Others claim that certain billionaires, corporations, or secret groups keep nukes as private insurance, stored in offshore bunkers, remote facilities, or disguised containers. The idea is that the official arsenals are only the public inventory, while a hidden lair exists outside normal oversight. Basically just says that nuclear power is something that can be bought, traded, and used for leverage behind closed doors. Colonel Corso's thesis. Colonel Corso's thesis comes from the claim that after the Roswell incident, the US military quietly recovered non-human technology and then used it to jumpstart modern inventions. Now, Corso was said to be a military insider who helped move pieces of this material into private companies through back channels. The claim is that corporations thought that they were developing advanced prototypes while they were actually just copying alien hardware. Things like fiber optics and night vision and lasers and microelectronics are what's been being seen as these seeded breakthroughs, with the government guiding the process. All right, tier 14. Jesus was an Anunnaki. Jesus was an Anunnaki is the idea that Jesus was not purely human, but he was a being connected to the Anunnaki, which are the ancient gods described in Mesopotamian tradition. The theory treats biblical miracles as advanced abilities or technology rather than supernatural magic. Now, Jesus' birth, his teachings, and his resurrection are framed as part of a larger plan by the Anunnaki to guide or manage human development. Angels and heavenly signs become visitors and crafts. Instead of a religious story, it becomes an alien contact story where Jesus is a hybrid or an engineered figure sent to influence humanity's spiritual and social path. Colors don't exist. Colors don't exist is the idea that color is not a real property of the world, but it is something that the brain invents. Now, light has different wavelengths, but the red or blue experience is treated as a mental overlay built by your nervous system. The theory pushes it further by saying that everyone's internal color experience could be different, and that no one could ever prove it. Some versions claim that reality is basically colorless data, and that color is a user interface that helps humans navigate, and it's not a feature of the universe itself. Which, funny enough, this theory was actually one of the first theories that I really believed in. I always said, I was like, what if the red that I see is not the red you see, you know? What if what I see as red is blue to you? Does that make sense? Like my red is red, but you see red as blue. So everything that I see as red, you see it as blue, but we will never know. Like, oh, look at that red rose. And to me, it's a normal red rose, but to you, it's a rose that's blue. Kinda. Valley of Lost Candles. Now, the Valley of Lost Candles is a legend about a remote valley where lights appear at night like floating candles in the distance. Travelers report seeing steady flames across the hills, then realizing that there are no camps, towns, or roads where the lights should be. The theory treats them kind of as bait, guiding people deeper into the valley until they get disoriented and cannot find the way back. Some versions say that the lights are spirits of the lost, while others describe them as living entities that feed on attention. Now, disappearances in the area are linked to people following the lights instead of turning around. Dreams of the blind. This is the idea that blind people access a different kind of dreaming that reveals hidden information. Instead of visual scenes, their dreams are described as pure space, sound, emotion, and sensation, like a map of reality without any images. The theory claims that this stripped down dreaming can tune into things that other people miss, including future events, distant places, or other minds. Some versions say that blindness removes visual noise, letting the brain pick up signals from a deeper layer of consciousness. Dreams become a kind of remote perception, and blind dreamers are treated like natural receivers. Hitler brainwashed by electromagnetic rays. This theory claims that Hitler's rise and decisions were steered by hidden technology that could influence the mind. The story says that a secret group used experimental transmitters, radio towers, or specialized devices to push thoughts, moods, and impulses into targets from a distance. Instead of persuasion, it was direct mental pressure, boosting obsession, paranoia, and aggression while guiding key choices at the right moments. Some versions connect it to occult research circles and early energy experiments, with Germany becoming the testing ground for remote mind control on a national scale. All mountains are giant trees. This basically just says that mountains are not rock formations, but they are the petrified remains of enormous ancient trees. The theory claims that Earth once had a completely different biosphere with life forms on a colossal scale. Now, when these mega trees died, they were buried, mineralized, and hardened into what now looks like stone. Mountain ridges become old bark patterns, cliff faces become snapped trunks, and plateaus become giant stumps. Strange rock layers and column shapes are treated like wood grain and growth rings frozen in place, suggesting that the world's landscape is the fossilized skeleton of a lost forest. America was never discovered. This theory says that the Americas were already known and regularly visited long before the famous discovery stories. The theory claims that routes across the Atlantic and Pacific were active for centuries, with traders, explorers, and even organized settlements coming and going. The official discovery narrative is treated like a branding move that gave certain empires legal and cultural ownership. Now, things like maps and symbols and old stories are framed as leftovers from earlier contact that was later just edited out of history. So according to this theory, history did not begin with discovery. It began with a rewrite that decided who got credit and control. Roman Empire rules Earth. Now, this theory says that Rome never truly fell, it just kind of changed its face. The theory claims that the empire shifted into new forms like the church, banking systems, legal structures, and modern governments, keeping the same power network alive under different names. Latin, Roman law, imperial symbols, and the layout of institutions are treated as signs of continuity. Leaders, corporations, and global alliances are framed as extensions of an old imperial machine that still runs policy and culture. According to this theory, modern politics is just Roman administration with updated costumes, I guess. Human Bigfoot War of 1855. This theory says that a real armed conflict broke out between settlers and a large group of Bigfoot-like beings in the mid-1800s. The story describes repeated attacks on cabins and camps, then organized retaliation where people tracked them into the woods. Gunfire, ambushes, and raids supposedly went on for days, with both sides taking losses. Afterwards, survivors allegedly kept quiet or were told to keep quiet, and that the event faded into scattered frontier accounts, treating Bigfoot as an organized force instead of a lone creature. New York Observatory Raid. Now, this theory is built around a sudden shutdown of an observatory after it allegedly caught something that it was not supposed to see. The story describes a fast evacuation, blocked access, and federal agents showing up to seize computers, drives, and telescope data. From there, the theory jumps to the idea that the instruments recorded a UFO near the sun, a strange object entering the system, or some kind of signal that forced an immediate lockdown. The raid is framed as evidence removal, with the real discovery kept classified. Anti-vax is population control. This claims that vaccination campaigns are not mainly about health, but about reducing or managing the population. It says that vaccines are tools to lower birth rates, to weaken immune systems over time, or to cause long-term illness that shortens lifespans. Governments, drug companies, and global institutions are portrayed as coordinating the effort through mandates, school requirements, and mass media messaging. The end goal is described as fewer people, more control, and a public that cannot easily trace the cause back to a single shot. Alright, moving on to tier 15, the last tier of this video. Abandoned mall catacombs. This is the theory that dead malls hide much bigger spaces underneath them than anyone admits or realizes. Behind locked service doors and maintenance tunnels, there are supposed to be long corridors, sealed rooms, and older structures that the malls were built over. Some versions say that these spaces are used for covert storage, meetings, or moving people without being seen. Others claim that the lower levels connect to wider tunnel networks under the cities. Urban explorers finding bricked up passages, strange vents, and unmarked stairwells are treated as proof that there is a second mall under the original mall. Teeth implants at birth. This is the idea that some babies are secretly given tiny implants in their mouths right after delivery, hidden in gums or behind developing teeth. The claim is that these devices can later be used for identification, tracking, or health data collection without the person ever noticing it. Hospitals and dental systems are framed as the perfect cover because early mouth exams are normal and kids lose teeth anyway. Some versions push it further and say that the implants connect to larger monitoring programs that follow someone for life under the, guise of routine medical care. Transcension hypothesis. The transcension hypothesis describes advanced civilizations going inward instead of outward. Now, as technology improves, everything gets smaller, denser, and more efficient until the best place to live is near black hole-like conditions. So instead of spreading across the galaxy with, obvious megastructures, a civilization compresses into ultra-compact systems, possibly building around black holes, then effectively leaves the visible universe by becoming almost impossible to detect. Now, this is used to explain why space looks quiet. Like the smartest life doesn't expand, it disappears into high-density inner space. Michigan Blue Hell. I would love to describe this theory, but my dog is squeaking toys. Okay, I think she's done. Okay, so Michigan Blue Hell is the idea that somewhere in Michigan, there's a real-world out-of-bounds spot, usually tied to underground tunnels or an abandoned building. Now, if you find the right door, stairwell, or passage and go far enough, the space stops behaving normally. Walls feel wrong, directions loop, and you can slip out of reality into a blue tinted void like falling through the map in a video game. Now, people who reach this, either vanish, they come back changed, or they return with missing time and fragments of what they saw in that blue place. No heaven, only hell. No heaven, only hell is the idea that the afterlife has been lied about. Instead of 2 destinations, there's said to be only one, and it's a harsh realm where souls are trapped. Heaven in this theory is kind of framed as a comforting story used to keep people obedient and hopeful, while the real structure is a one-way system that feeds on suffering. Some versions describe it like a prison or farm where souls are processed, recycled, or punished endlessly. Now, near-death experiences, nightmares, and reports of dark entities are treated as glimpses of the truth, suggesting that the universe is built around torment and not reward. Time is going faster. Time is going faster is the idea that the flow of time is accelerating, even if, like, our clocks aren't technically getting faster. People describe weeks feeling like days, memories blurring, and years passing with no sense of weight. The theory claims that this is not just aging or stress, but it's a real change in how reality runs. Some versions say that Earth is moving through a different region of space that affects time. Others blame technology and constant stimulation compressing perception, making life feel sped up. The strongest version says that the timeline itself is tightening as the world approaches a major reset point. Like reality is almost like rushing to get somewhere, or they're rushing towards something. 1800s internet. 1800s internet is the idea that something like the modern internet existed in the 19th century, but it was just a different form. Now, instead of Wi-Fi and having screens, it is said to be a hidden information network built around telegraph lines, coded messages, switchboards, and early long-distance signal systems. Now, operators and agencies could send data, they could route it, and they could even search it through human-run relay hubs that acted like servers. Some versions add secret signal stations and private corporate lines, claiming that the public only saw the simple version, while a deeper network handled surveillance, finance, and government coordination, kind of like an offline internet. Tier 16, Soviet Skinlight. Soviet skinlight is the claim that Soviet researchers trained people to perceive light and color through their skin. Now, in the stories, subjects are blindfolded but can still identify colored cards, shapes, and sometimes letters by moving fingertips or palms over them. Now, the skin is treated like a sensory surface that can pick up light information, almost like a second set of eyes. Now, the idea often gets tied to special programs that worked with children because they were seen as easier to train. The rumored end goal was practical use, letting someone read, navigate, or recognize signals without relying on normal vision, with, obvious value for military and intelligence work. Reality's reality effect. Reality's reality effect is the idea that reality works like a self-correcting story. Now, when people start noticing patterns, questioning what is real, or pushing at the edges, the world almost adjusts to keep everything feeling normal and believable. Things like strange coincidences line up, missing details suddenly appear, witnesses change their memory, and inconvenient evidence fades out, all to restore a clean version of events. Some versions add that secret groups try to provoke this on purpose, staging situations to see how far reality can be bent before it snaps back into a convincing shape. We kill the universe every time we look at dark energy. Now, this theory is the idea that observing dark energy is dangerous because observation is not passive. Measuring dark energy is treated like poking the deepest rule of reality. When scientists map cosmic expansion, analyze supernovas, or try to pin down what dark energy is, the universe is said to react. Some versions describe it like a quantum trap where looking forces a collapse into a different outcome. Others describe it like triggering vacuum decay, which is a chain reaction that wipes out the current universe and restarts it in a new state. Now, the twist is that nobody notices because the reset includes our memories and history. So every time we look at dark energy, we might be ending everything and waking up inside the next version of reality. Unholy teleology. Now, unholy teleology is the idea that history has a built-in direction, but the destination is dark. Now, instead of the universe trending toward progress or balance, everything is being pulled toward a specific end state that benefits something predatory. Things like wars and plagues and collapses and even bursts of technology are treated like steps in a plan, not just like random events. When society starts to stabilize, something nudges it back into chaos so that the timeline stays on track. Human choices still happen, but the range of outcomes is guided, like a maze that always funnels you to the exact same exit. The unholy part is the purpose itself. And that's basically that reality is steering toward maximum suffering, a final reveal, or the opening of a door that should never be opened. 24-hour year. 24-hour year is the idea that a full year is not 365 days, but it is really just 24 hours, and we have been taught the wrong scale of time. Now, the theory claims that the sun's year cycle is being simulated, stretched, or looped, making one real day feel like an entire year inside a controlled system. Things like seasons and holidays and even aging are framed as programmed phases that repeat inside that 24-hour container. Clocks and calendars are treated like interfaces that keep people synchronized to the illusion. Some versions say that this is why time feels like it is speeding up, and it's basically just because the system is compressing toward the end of the 24-hour cycle. When the day ends, the world resets, and we start the next year without remembering the previous one. God's second son. God's second son is the idea that Jesus was not the only divine child sent to earth. A second son was born, lived, or is still alive, but his identity was hidden to keep religious power centralized. Some versions place him in secret gospels and early Christian disputes, with his story removed when leaders decided which texts became official. Others claim that he founded an underground bloodline that still exists, and it's protected by guarded families and private orders. Instead of a public ministry, this figure works through symbols, coded teachings, and quiet influence. Now, the end of this story is usually always the same. The second son eventually reveals himself, not to replace Jesus, but to complete an unfinished plan and reset what people think they know about God's design. Earth is bigger than the sun. Earth is bigger than the sun is the claim that the size of the sun has been exaggerated and the size of Earth has been minimized. The idea says that the sun is actually a smaller, closer object, more kind of like a powerful light in the sky rather than just a massive star. Meanwhile, Earth is described as far larger than maps and space agencies admit, with oceans and continents beyond the known world. Photos of the sun, distant measurements, and scale models are treated as staged or based on false assumptions. So basically, this theory is saying that the real Earth is a huge realm and that the sun is just one moving lamp within it, which is why the sun looks the size it does from the ground and why its behavior seems local rather than cosmic. Oxygen is poisonous. Oxygen is poisonous is the idea that oxygen is not the life-giving element that we are taught, but it's actually a slow-acting toxin. Now, the theory claims that living things were originally adapted to a different atmosphere, and that the rise of oxygen forced life to evolve survival tricks instead of thriving naturally. Aging is framed as long-term oxidation damage, basically rusting from the inside. Breathing oxygen keeps you alive in the short term, but it also breaks you down over time, which is why bodies fail and cells degrade. Some versions say that the atmosphere is intentionally maintained at a level that keeps humans limited, tired, and short-lived. This theory basically just says that what we call normal air is a controlled environment, and true vitality would require a different mix that people are not allowed to access. Pangaea is a US state. This theory says that Pangaea is not an ancient supercontinent. It is a real modern jurisdiction that exists off the map. The claim is that it functions like a shadow state used for paperwork, corporate registration, and classified projects, with its own courts and laws and even its own tax setup. References to Pangaea in old documents and shipping systems and databases and even odd map labels are kind of seen as like accidental leaks. Some versions place it on a remote island chain, a sealed military zone, or even a massive ocean platform. The point is that it lets powerful groups operate in a legal gray space while everyone just assumes that Pangaea is only prehistoric history. Comic-Con child recruitment. Comic-Con child recruitment is the idea that big comic and fandom conventions double as hunting grounds for quietly funneling minors into creepy networks. It frames cosplay contests, fan meetups, volunteer programs, and talent scouting as cover for adults who target kids that want attention, community, or a chance to be seen online. The claim is that contact starts in public and then it shifts into private chats and exclusive invites and off-site hangouts, with pressure disguised as mentorship. Things like badges and photos and social media tags are seen as an easy way to identify and track specific kids across events. Now, the darkest versions connected to organized exploitation rings that move from convention to convention, staying hidden in plain sight. All right, let's move on to Tier 17. Nothing outside your vision exists. Now, this theory says that reality only renders where you are looking. Everything behind you, inside closed rooms, or beyond your attention is treated like ungenerated space until you turn your eyes toward it. Object permanence becomes a trick that your brain assumes and not a rule of the universe. The world stays stable because it fills in details the moment that you check, using memory and expectation to keep the illusion seamless. Some versions push it further and claim that other people only fully exist when you interact with them, and that the rest of the time they are just like little placeholder NPCs. Life basically just becomes a first-person simulation where vision is, kind of like your loading screen. God's ego death. God's ego death is the idea that the universe exists because God tried to destroy its own ego. Instead of dying, that ego shattered into countless fragments, and each fragment became a mind living a separate life. Reality is basically the aftermath of that split, with every person acting as a tiny piece of the same original consciousness that forgot what it is. Pain and love and fear and even desire, they're all treated as the engine that keeps the illusion running, because those emotions keep the fragments identified as separate. In this theory, enlightenment is described as reversing the process, where a person dissolves their individual ego and briefly reconnects to the original mind that started it all. Invisible walls. This theory says that there are real barriers in the world that you cannot see, but that you can hit or interact with. People describe walking or driving into open space and then suddenly stopping, kind of like they ran into glass. Sometimes it comes with a pressure feeling, dizziness, nausea, or a sense that you are being pushed back. The walls are described as protecting hidden areas like underground facilities, restricted land, or locations that are not supposed to be found. Some versions say that the barrier moves, so the boundary can shift depending on the time or who is nearby. Others frame it as a part of a larger system that keeps the public inside approved zones, like the world kind of has these invisible fences that are baked into it and that can move and can change and can be different for different people. Jesus died in Japan. This theory says that Jesus did not die in Jerusalem, but he escaped and lived out the rest of his life in Japan. Now, according to the story, someone else took his place during the crucifixion, and Jesus traveled east along ancient routes until he reached northern Japan. He is said to have settled down as a farmer, and he got married, and he had children, and he lived to an old age under a new identity. The theory often points to a small village with a supposed tomb, local traditions, and artifacts that are treated like remnants of his life there. It basically reframes Christianity's central event as a substitution and escape, turning Jesus into a wandering survivor whose real ending was quietly preserved far from the biblical world. Sky is a hologram. The sky is a hologram is the idea that what we see above us is not open space, but it's a projected display. Now, things like the sun and the moon and the stars and even clouds are treated like layered visuals rendered onto a dome or screen around the Earth. Glitches like strange sunsets, repeating cloud patterns, stars that move wrong or appear weird, they're all framed as rendering errors or system updates. Now, satellites and space travel get reinterpreted as activity inside the projection system and not outside the planet. Some versions claim that the hologram is used to limit what humans can perceive, hiding a larger world beyond the sky while keeping everyone focused on a convincing, everyday ceiling, basically. Medieval found footage. Medieval found footage is the idea that modern people have stumbled onto recordings from the Middle Ages, like actual videos or audio that shouldn't exist. The story usually involves an old tape, a corrupted file, or a reel found in an attic, an archive, or estate sales. Now, when it plays, it shows rough handheld style footage of castles, plague streets, battles, or even religious rituals, filmed from inside the moment, like someone brought a camera back in time, pressed play, and now we're finding the tape. Human scripting. Human scripting is the idea that most people are basically running pre-written code. Now, your personality, your beliefs, and your life path are shaped early through family and school and culture and trauma and even repetition until you start reacting in predictable ways. Things like the media and algorithms and advertising, it all just reinforces the script by rewarding certain opinions and punishing others. In this view, free will exists only in small gaps because most choices are nudged before you even feel them. Some versions add that the script is actively edited in real time, so when society needs a new fear or a new trend, people shift together like they all got the same update. The end result is a world full of highly controllable behavior that feels personal but runs like a program. Soft data catastrophe. This theory says that modern life is turning into one giant profile about you. And not like your ID or your bank information, but things like your taste and your moods and your politics and your fears and your relationships and your habits. It's all inferred from what you watch, what you buy, what you search, and what you share. Now, as that profile gets more complete, it basically just starts deciding your life for you. Ads stop selling products and they start steering beliefs. Feeds stop showing the world and start shaping it. Jobs, credit, dating, travel, and even law enforcement get filtered through prediction scores. The catastrophe is when the soft data model becomes more important than the real person, and you end up living inside a loop where everything you see is chosen to keep you predictable and controllable. Alien internet. Now, if you watched my last video, you know I got these bitches. These are the alien glasses I put on when we talk about aliens. Found home. Now, alien internet is the idea that there's a non-human network running alongside ours, and sometimes our tech accidentally touches it. Now, the theory claims that alien signals ride on frequencies that we barely monitor, and old radio towers and satellites and deep space antennas can pick up fragments like strange tones, impossible data bursts, or images that do not match any human source. Some versions say that the internet itself is a crude copy of something found or intercepted, and certain glitches are leaked through from that older system. Now, the craziest version of this theory says that there are hidden nodes on Earth that act like routers for this network, and whoever controls access can communicate off-grid, they can move information instantly, and they can watch what happens on Earth without being seen. Stars are holes in the sky. This theory says that the night sky is a solid barrier, and it's kind of just like a big dome over Earth, and the stars that we see in the sky are like literal openings in the dome. Instead of distant suns, each star is a puncture where a brighter realm behind the sky shines through. Their twinkling comes from the hole shifting, the opening breathing, or the light behind it flickering. Shooting stars are described as new holes being made or old ones tearing wider for a moment. Eclipses and strange lights get framed as something moving behind the dome and blocking or filtering the light. Now, in this view, space is not an endless void, but it is a ceiling hiding whatever is on the other side of it. All right, now let's get into tier 18. JFK killed himself. JFK killed himself is the claim that the assassination was actually a staged suicide. Now, in this version, JFK knew that he was trapped by illness, scandal, or political pressure, and he chose to die. But he needed it to look like an attack so that the country would stay stable and that his family would be protected. Now, the motorcade route, the lack of heavy protection, and the timing are framed as parts of the setup. Some tellings say that the fatal shot came from inside the car using a hidden weapon or a special device. Others say that a trusted insider delivered the shot under a plan that JFK agreed to, and that the rest of the story was built to sell the assassination angle to the public. Meth immortality. Now, this is the idea that meth can keep someone alive far longer than normal, or even, in this theory, indefinitely. It frames meth as a harsh kind of fuel that forces the body to keep moving when it should shut down, pushing people through pain and hunger and sleep loss and even sickness. According to the theory, heavy users who should be dead are still walking around because the chemical is overriding the body's limits. Some versions go further and claim that certain batches are altered on purpose, turning meth into a crude life extension experiment that trades sanity and stability for survival. Now, it also shows up in urban legend form where people say that they have met people who look ruined but like somehow never die and all they're doing is meth. But hey, I'm not a doctor. I'm not telling you to do meth. Please don't do meth, because this is a theory and this is not scientific proof or data or anything. I'm not a scientist, so just don't do meth. How about that? Pancreas denial. Pancreas denial is the claim that your pancreas is not just an organ for blood sugar, but it is a hidden energy center in the body tied to willpower and emotional balance. Now, according to the theory, your pancreas acts like a filter that processes bad energy and keeps your inner life stable, almost like a spiritual organ that you are supposed to train and to strengthen. Modern life is framed as a system that makes you ignore that purpose through stress and diet and constant stimulation, so that the pancreas stays stuck doing basic physical work instead of unlocking higher perception. The phrase "deny your pancreas its purpose" gets used like a warning that you are blocking your own upgrade. Urine fasting. Urine fasting is the idea that you can fast while still sustaining yourself by drinking your own urine. It's framed as a built-in recycling system where the body sends unused vitamins, hormones, and minerals back out, and taking it back in is supposed to reclaim that value. People connected to detox, healing chronic illness, boosting energy, and resetting the immune system, with the fast acting like a deep internal cleanse. Some versions treat it as ancient medicine that was buried by modern healthcare and say that the discomfort is part of the purge. The more extreme versions claim that urine can replace food for long stretches and can even slow down your aging. But again, I'm not a doctor. This is just a theory. Don't fast on your own piss. Let's just say that. Nothing is known. Nothing is known is the idea that certainty is impossible and everything people call knowledge is just a story that feels stable. Your senses can be tricked, your memory can be rewritten, your language can't perfectly match reality, and every fact depends on other assumptions that you never personally verified. History basically just becomes a curated narrative. Science becomes a model that works until it doesn't, and even your own identity becomes a shifting guess built from recalled moments. Now, in its darkest form, the theory suggests that reality could be a dream, a simulation, or a repeating loop, and that there's no reliable way to prove otherwise. All you ever have is a stream of experience, and even that might be, manufactured. Sky snag theory. Sky snag theory frames UFOs as tears in the sky itself, and not objects, flying through it. The idea is that the air can snag, split, or implode like fabric catching on something, and when that happens, it forms a smooth metallic looking disc shape. Light can shine out from the split, so it looks like a glowing craft with bright edges or a lit center. The saucer can appear suddenly, it can hang in place, it can wobble, or it can move in ways that feel unreal because, it's not a vehicle. It is a brief laceration in the sky. When the snag closes, the disc vanishes, leaving no landing site, no debris, and no clear path of travel. I also just realized throughout that whole thing, I did not wear the fucking alien glasses. God damn it. All conspiracies are true. All conspiracies are true is the idea that no conspiracy theory is random. Every major conspiracy is treated as a real piece of a much bigger hidden system, even when they seem to contradict each other. The contradictions get explained as different angles on the same machine or as deliberate misinformation meant to split attention. According to this theory, governments, corporations, media, and even secret societies run layered operations, so there is always another cover story behind the cover story. Things like weird coincidences, repeating symbols, and the way that the same themes show up across decades are taken as proof that, everything is connected. Now, the final twist in this theory is that the web is so large that it can absorb almost any story. If someone can imagine it, it has already been done somewhere, and the only reason it sounds impossible is because the public is kept too distracted to see the full picture. Chaos banking. Chaos banking is the idea that big banks and financial insiders make their best money when the world is unstable, so instability is not a bug, it is literally the product. Crashes, wars, and even sudden panics are treated like engineered events that let powerful players buy real assets super cheap, they can lock in new laws, and they can push people into more debt. When the dust settles, these same institutions that failed get rescued, reshaped, and handed even more control over things like credit and housing and even savings. Now, according to this theory, every wave of chaos ends the same way, and that is that ordinary people lose security, and then the financial system comes out bigger, richer, and harder to escape. Continents beyond the ice wall. This is the idea that Antarctica is not a continent at the bottom of the globe, but it's an enormous ring of ice that acts like a border. Now, past that border, there are supposedly more lands, more oceans, and even full continents that never appear on maps. The story claims that governments and militaries guard the ice wall, they restrict travel, and they enforce secrecy through treaties and controlled flight routes. Now, satellites and world maps are framed as curated images that hide what is outside of the known world. Some versions add that these hidden continents have untouched resources, advanced civilizations, or even strange wildlife, and that the real reason for secrecy is to keep the public trapped inside the almost like approved part of Earth. All right, let's move on to tier 19. World wraps. World wraps is the idea that the world does not end at an edge and that it loops. If you travel far enough in one direction, you can eventually circle into a different version of the same place, kind of like the planet is wrapped or folded over itself. Things like roads and coastlines and even timelines are said to connect in ways that maps cannot show because the surface is not a simple globe or a flat plane. Some versions describe hidden seams where reality stitches together, creating repeating landscapes and deja vu routes. Others claim that they are wrapped layers, so certain long journeys quietly cross into a parallel track of Earth without you ever noticing it, which is why explorers and pilots report strange navigation errors, missing time, and locations that feel familiar but are not supposed to exist. Earth is the only true planet. Now, this is the idea that Earth is the only real world and that everything else in space is either fake, symbolic, or some type of display. The sun and moon are treated as local objects and not distant bodies, and other planets are described as lights, projections, or reflections that look solid only through telescopes and photos. Space agencies are seen as curating images and stories to sell a cosmic model that keeps people looking outward instead of questioning what Earth actually is. Some versions say that the planets are spiritual markers or clock faces that track seasons and fate. Others say that they are part of a simulation interface, with Earth as the only physical environment and the rest as like a decorative scenery meant to suggest an infinite universe. But in reality, it's not an infinite universe, it's just Earth. The universe ended long ago. The universe ended long ago is basically the idea that reality already reached its ending, and what we are living in now is the aftermath. In this story, the true timeline hit a final collapse, a heat death, or a total reset, but consciousness didn't stop. Instead, existence continues inside a kind of echo, like the last frame of a movie stretched into a new experience. Things like glitches and deja vu and the feeling that the world is running on fumes are treated as signs of a dead universe looping. Some versions say that we are inside a simulation built after the end, just replaying fragments of history. Others say that we are in a saved state of reality, held together by memory and habit, while the real universe outside like our little bubble is already gone. The truth does not exist. The truth does not exist is the idea that there is no single objective reality that anyone can access. Everything gets filtered through perception, language, culture, and memory. So truth is just a label that people put on whatever story holds power in the moment. Facts become agreements, and agreements change when politics, fear, and identity shift. Even measurements are treated like interpretations because the act of observing shapes what gets observed. In this view, history is never fixed, and it is continuously rewritten by whoever controls records and attention. Personal truth is not more reliable either, because your own mind edits memories and emotions to protect you. What feels like truth is just the brain locking onto a version of events that helps you function. Reality basically just becomes a pile of competing narratives with no final say, basically, or like no final like referee. Life is an unproven theory. This theory says that life is just a concept that humans invented, and it's not a proven category in reality. According to this theory, we assume a sharp line between living and non-living, but we can't actually define it in a way that covers everything. Things like cells and viruses and AI and ecosystems and even planets kind of blur the boundary, so the label becomes more like a habit than a fact. The theory pushes further and says that what we call being alive might be a story that our brains tell to organize like motion and complexity. Consciousness and purpose and selfhood get treated as interpretations layered onto chemistry and patterns. So life is not a confirmed property, it is a guess, and the universe might not recognize it as real or as a real thing, at all. Hollow universe. Hollow universe is the idea that we are living inside a massive sphere and not in an open space. Instead of looking out into an endless cosmos, every star and galaxy you see is either attached to the inner surface of this shell or is light traveling inside of it. Space becomes a big interior room with Earth somewhere on the inside and up pointing toward the center. Gravity is explained as a force that pulls you toward the inner wall, keeping oceans and people stuck to it. Some versions claim that the outer side of the shell is unreachable, and what we call deep space is literally just distance across the inside of this cosmic container. God's last wish. God's last wish is the idea that the universe began as a final request from God right before disappearing, changing form, or going silent. Instead of creating reality out of joy, God created it to fulfill one last desire, like wanting to be surprised, or wanting to feel limitation, or wanting to be truly forgotten. So existence basically just becomes a carefully built scenario where God can no longer access full power or full memory, because that would ruin the wish. Human lives are treated as pieces of that wish being acted out, with each person carrying a tiny shard of the original mind. Things like fate and strange repeating patterns are seen as the wish guiding events so that it reaches completion. When the wish is finally satisfied, reality either ends or it just resets. Half matter. Half matter is the idea that scientists found a new kind of substance that only half exists in our physical world. It can behave like matter, but it also slips through normal rules, like it is partly in another layer of reality. Now, because of that, it can pass through objects, it can bend light, and it can carry energy in weird ways. The theory says that governments and defense contractors grabbed the discovery early and classified it, since half matter could power silent vehicles, near invisible tech, and computers that run insanely fast. Now, the public only gets crumbs through strange lab leaks, odd patents, and stories about materials that do not weigh right, do not scan right, and seem to flicker between being there and not being there. Empty internet. Empty internet is the idea that the internet looks huge, but it is mostly hollow. The old web of personal sites, weird forums, and active communities is seen as dead or buried, replaced by a thin layer of big platforms, ads, and search results that keep recycling the same content. You can scroll forever, but it is the same handful of posts and videos, and headlines get copied or re-uploaded or even reposted. Comments and likes are treated like staged activity, with bots and automated accounts keeping the lights on. When you try to explore deeper, you hit abandoned pages, broken links, paywalls, and empty feeds. This theory frames the modern internet as a shopping mall after closing time that still plays music so nobody notices that it is mostly vacant. There is no conspiracy. There is no conspiracy is the idea that the world is not run by a hidden master plan at all. Like, all of the chaos we have is real, and events happen because of ordinary motives like money, ego, fear, and incompetence. And it's not just like these secret councils everywhere. Patterns that people see are created after the fact because the brain hates randomness and wants a story. Power still exists, but it is messy and it's competing and it's short-sighted, with groups constantly reacting instead of controlling everything. The conspiracy becomes the belief itself, and it's basically a mental trap that turns coincidence into certainty and keeps people chasing invisible puppeteers. In this view, the scariest truth is that nobody is driving, and the system lurches forward on momentum, mistakes, and human weakness. And now, the last tier of the conspiracy theory iceberg, Tier 20. Apollo 11 landed on the wrong moon. This theory claims that Apollo 11 touched down somewhere other than Earth's moon, and then NASA covered it up to avoid admitting the navigation failure. Now, the story usually goes that the crew ended up on a different lunar body, like a hidden second moon, a captured asteroid, or a phantom object that was not supposed to be public knowledge. Now, once the astronauts realized that the landscape did not match the expected maps, Mission Control supposedly switched to damage control, cutting parts of the live feed, smoothing over strange radio audio, and later releasing photos and transcripts that fit the official landing site. Any gaps in transmission or missing minutes get framed as the moments when the crew and NASA were figuring out how to sell the landing as planned. Third hemisphere of the brain. The third hemisphere of the brain is the idea that humans have an extra brain region that either exists physically and is hidden, or it exists in a non-physical layer and it is ignored by mainstream science. Now, it is described as a third hemisphere responsible for intuition, for psychic perception, for dream access, and the feeling that you can sense things before they happen. Some versions claim that it is a dormant structure that can be activated through medication, trauma, or specific training, and once it turns on, a person starts noticing patterns and information that seems to arrive from nowhere. Now, the conspiracy angle says that institutions discourage people from developing it because it makes individuals harder to control. Things like education and diet and constant noises and even stress are framed as things that keep this hemisphere asleep or hidden. In the darker versions of this theory, advanced groups and intelligence programs train select people to use it for remote viewing, influence, or prediction, while the public gets told that, you know, it doesn't exist, and then if you believe it, you're a wacko. Super sensory knowledge stored in the cloaca. This theory says that the cloaca is a hidden biological storage point for extra sensory information. Now, instead of the brain holding all awareness, the body supposedly saves certain kinds of knowledge lower down in the cloaca, like a sealed compartment that keeps data that the mind cannot normally access. According to the theory, the cloaca can hold impressions gathered outside normal senses. That can include things like sudden knowing, instincts that feel too accurate, information picked up from the environment without noticing, or even inherited memory passed through bloodlines. Now, the brain only gets small hits from it, which show up as gut feelings, vivid dreams, or random flashes of insight that seem to come from nowhere. The theory also claims that this storage can be opened and read under the right conditions. Certain physical states are supposed to unlock it, like deep relaxation, intense stress, altered breathing, fasting, or specific body positions that shift internal pressure and nerve signals. When the lock opens, The stored information is said to rise upward into awareness, arriving as clear thoughts and images or even sudden answers. Some versions add that this mechanism exists across many animals with cloacas and that it is an ancient survival system that humans lost access to. But it's said, or this theory says, that it can still be partially reactivated. 9/11 happens every year. This theory claims that the events of September 11th are not a one-time tragedy. It says that a version of 9/11 repeats every year, either in the open or in a hidden way. Now, in one version, a major attack or staged disaster happens annually on or near September 11th, but it is covered up, it's relabeled, or it's kept out of public view. The public only sees small fragments like sudden accidents, unusual fires, strange shutdowns, or unexplained emergencies that fit the same pattern. Another version treats it like an annual reset point where the world is pushed through the same script every single year. September 11th becomes a trigger for coordinated moves like new policies, market shifts, security drills, or military actions that echo the original day's impact. The idea is that 9/11 is not just remembered every year. It is repeated, it's recreated, or it's reactivated on a schedule with the goal of renewing fear, control, and the long-term changes that followed the original event. And the last theory is sky beef. Now, sky beef is the idea that meat is being dropped or sprayed from the sky on purpose, and then it's explained away as random accidents. Now, the story usually starts with reports of chunks of flesh landing in fields, on roads, or in people's yards, sometimes after a loud noise or a low-flying aircraft. The theory says that this is not a freak event, but it's a part of a hidden system. In one version, aircraft dump unwanted animal waste from processing plants during transport, either to save money or to avoid disposal rules. In another version, meat is released during secret tests, like experiments with chemicals, disease, tracking dyes, or preservation methods. A darker version says that the drops are used to contaminate wildlife, lure predators into certain areas, or seed an outbreak that can be blamed on nature. Now, the name sky beef comes from the idea that it is literally beef or mystery meat falling from above, with officials giving vague explanations like it's being, like they call it, unknown debris or natural causes. But the claim is that these meat falls are intentional, they're organized, and they're used as a quiet way to move, hide, or spread something without leaving a normal paper trail.